Chapter 20. Sword Chasing. Issei's room. Issei, Rias, and Aisha had just come back from Kuo Academy. They hadn't really said much, each being in their own thoughts. Now, they were all gathered and sitting down in the brown-haired teen's room. Man, just what is Kiba's deal with those DMN swords? Issei half complained, half inquired. Why on earth is he so determined to destroy them? It's because of his past, Rias answered. Yuto was part of the Holy Sword project, in which the church attempted to create artificial holy sword wielders. However, the project was deemed a failure and all the child test subjects were to be terminated. Yuto is the sole survivor of that dark project. Issei's eyes widened at the revelation of his friend's dark past. He couldn't believe that something so twisted had taken place. Aisha was in a similar state, trembling with fear and disbelief. No, it can't be, she protested weakly. Something like that couldn't have been allowed, it's just not acceptable. The crimson-haired Gremory heiress continued. When I found Yuto, he was freezing and on the verge of death. His eyes looked so cold and empty of life. When I turned him into my servant, I was hoping that he could forget about his past and move on for a better life. But now he's gone back to how he was in the beginning, avenging his fallen friends and destroying the Excaliburs that he hates so much being the only things on his mind. All three of them fell into silence. Suddenly, Ria stood up and began taking off her shirt. Well, it's no use moping over it, she stated, dropping her removed garment to the floor. Bibi Bucho. Why are you taking your clothes off? Issei exclaimed. He might have been an infamous pervert, but even he was shocked at the unexpected turn of events. I thought I already told you, I can't go to sleep with clothes on, Rias flatly replied. I know that, but why are you getting naked here? The brown-haired teen asked. Isn't it obvious? I'm going to be sleeping with you, the peerage leader answered as though it was a fact. At those words, a teary-eyed Aisha started trying to lift her shirt off too. In that case, I'll get naked too, the blonde declared. What? Not you too, Aisha. Issei protested. Aisha, what do you think you're doing? Rias demanded. I also deserve to be pampered by Issei-san, the bishop retaliated. I don't want to be left out. It's not fair that you always keep him to yourself. In that case, why don't we let Issei himself decide? Rias challenged. A was the only thing the Red Dragon Emperor could utter as he was unwillingly dragged into the spat. Both of them were staring at him expectantly. Well? It's obviously going to be me, right? Rias asked with a blank expression. Issei-san, please don't leave me out, Aisha begged with teary puppy dog eyes. OCRP, I'm a dead man, aren't I? Issei mentally lamented. With Ichigo. A certain spiky-haired Soul Reaper was moving through the park, taking a peaceful evening walk. His other housemates had gone to a different part of town, leaving him by himself, not that he really minded anyway. Ichigo took a deep breath of the cool evening air. His momentary peace was interrupted, however, by a certain pale doppelganger's voice resounding in his head. Hey King, there's a fragment up ahead, his inner hollow warned. It's not in a barrier, but its presence still seems kind of diffused. Thanks for the heads up, Ichigo replied, shifting his attire to his black Soul Reaper's robes. Ichigo, I would suggest that you use only your sacred gear for this battle, voiced Zangetsu. It will give you more experience as well as let you see how adept you are at using it currently. Sounds like a good idea, old man, the orange-haired teen agreed before equipping the twin black, skeletal gauntlets of his shock burner sacred gear. True to his Hollow's alert, within a few paces he felt himself pass through something. It didn't feel like any kind of barrier that he'd previously moved through. It was more like he'd gone through foam or some sort of static charge field. Then, the fragment entered his sights. It was a tall, mostly humanoid bipedal creature, a head taller than he himself was. Its body was mostly a dark maroon-red color with black forearms and shins, making them look like natural armor. The head looked somewhat like a helmet carved with a praying mantis design. From the outer sides of each forearm jutted a crescent-shaped crimson blade and its feet ended in 3 claws. The fragment gave a slightly high-pitched roar, the jaw of its helmet-like head moving to match the action. It didn't have any teeth as far as he could tell, but the full edge seemed to be sharp as a razor. His signature scowl in place, Ichigo shifted into a fighting stance. He made a come-hither motion with his hand. The fragment lunged at the teenager with its right arm poised to strike. Ducking under the blow, Ichigo aimed a strike of his own at the creature's unguarded abdomen. When his fist made contact, he blasted out a bolt of lightning like a railgun, sending the fragment crashing into the ground. After a second or two, the fragment flipped into the air and onto its feet. Both fighters circled around each other, waiting for an opportunity. Deciding to take his opponent by surprise, the orange-haired substitute charged in first. Flash stepping up to it, he punched the off-guard fragment in what would have been its face. Following it up, Ichigo rammed his other fist, which was coated in flames, into his enemy's chest before kicking it in the gut. Impressively, the fragment didn't fall down from the assault, although it did stagger back a bit. Giving another screeching roar, it rushed at the teenage Soul Reaper. Hearing his inner hollow suggestion, Ichigo gave an amused smirk. He skillfully blocked and deflected the fragment's strike and slashes using his armored gauntlets. Creating an opening, he shrouded his right fist in fire, then proceeded to deliver a spinning uppercut to the thing's chin. Shoryuken! Ichigo shouted as his opponent was sent up into the air. While the fragment was still airborne and relatively defenseless due to being slightly dazed, he began charging up a ball of blue lightning in his right hand while he charged a crimson ball of flames in his left. His inner hollow quipped another suggestion to him. Fine, but this is the last one, Ichigo agreed in a reluctant tone, but had a small smirk showing his amusement at what he was going to do. Smashing both orbs together, he moved both hands forward and shot the powerful pyroelectric ball at the falling fragment. Hadouken! His attack destroyed the fragment upon colliding with it, causing the being to disintegrate into smoky black particles. The strange static field also lifted away. Unsummoning his sacred gear, Ichigo put his hands into his pockets and resumed his earlier walk. He thought back on the events that had happened since he was brought to this new dimension of reality and how things had been since then. A small melancholy smile formed on his face. He was happy to have his powers back, gain new ones, and make new allies and friends, but it still saddened him how he wouldn't be able to see his family and original friends anymore. Dad, Yuzu, Karen, the orange-haired teen thought. Chad, Yuryu, Oriheim, Rukia, Rinji, everyone else at Soul Society, Tatsuki, Mizuiro, even Kigo and all the others who I know. I hope you guys are all doing okay. He didn't dwell on it or let it bring him down into a slump, none of them would have wanted that. Instead, he would move forward as much as he could and would cherish the memories he shared with them. Besides, it wouldn't be fair on his new friends to make them concerned and have them worry over his personal issues. He continued his peaceful stroll through the park undisturbed, taking the time to relax and enjoy his natural surroundings. A few minutes passed like that before Ichigo arrived at one of the park's entrances or exits, recognizable by the stone archway. Another man was stood there, just beyond the park's boundaries. He was a young-looking man who had dark black hair with gold bangs at the front and a slight stubble beard. His outfit consisted of simple yet elegant traditional-style Japanese kimono-like clothing that was a deep maroon in color. He looked perfectly normal, however that was only his outward appearance. Ichigo could feel something else coming from the stranger, and it was powerful too. "Oh, I didn't expect to see a youth like yourself out for a nice evening stroll," the man greeted in a friendly manner with a smiling expression. "Ah, it's good to know that there are some kids who enjoy the finer points of life. I may not be the best sensor out there, but even I can tell when a fallen angel is standing right in front of me," the spiky-haired teen bluntly stated. "I hardly believe that it's a coincidence you running into me like this, and I'm pretty sure that I told the other fallen angel who was tailing me that I don't appreciate being stalked. So, tell me who you are and what you want." "Straight to the point, hey," murmured the man. "Don't worry, I'm not here to make a commotion. Not going to try recruiting you either, you made your point of staying neutral quite clear last time." Ichigo kept his trademark scowl in place. "If that's the case, then to what do I owe the pleasure of meeting you this night?" Ha, I like that no-nonsense attitude of yours, the fallen angel complimented. Anyway, I just thought that I'd like to meet you for myself. Allow me to properly introduce myself. Numerous jet black wings burst forth from the man's back, 6 pairs in total. I'm the boss, or governor if you prefer, of the fallen angel faction, Azazel. I'm pleased to make your acquaintance. After revealing his identity, he hid his wings away once more. Ichigo Kurosaki, the teenage Soul Reaper, replied in kind. He almost had to stop himself from adding on the substitute Soul Reaper due to habit. It seems that one of your little generals is causing quite the ruckus, Kokabiel to be precise. You wouldn't happen to have anything to do with that, would you? Geez, why is everybody always so suspicious of me? Azazel rhetorically asked to nobody in particular. No, I don't have anything to do with that fool's actions. I'm a rather simple guy, to be honest. I'd much rather prefer being able to get on with my sacred gear research in peace than ignite another war like Kokabiel wants. Ichigo took a moment to process what the fallen angel's boss had just told him. The man didn't seem like he was lying. He was far too relaxed too if he was intending to start something with the teenage war hero. It seemed that this was someone who he could trust for now. You know, if things get out of hand and I get dragged into the fight, I can't guarantee that your subordinate will survive, Ichigo warned, not as a threat but simply as a neutral statement. Don't worry about it, Azazel assured. If you kill him, then so be it. Kokabiel became a traitor the moment he went against my orders and acted independently to steal the Excalibur fragments. Even if he doesn't die from the upcoming showdown, I'll most likely have him sealed and frozen for eternity for trying to start another war. Ichigo stuck his right hand out for a shake, his lips in the form of a small smirk. You seem like a good enough guy, the teen admitted. Thank you for thinking so, the fallen leader said, taking the offered hand and shaking it. I'll be relying on you to straighten things out if Kokabiel goes too far. No problem. I'll make sure that crow gets what's coming to him. With a final nod of acknowledgement, both males dropped the handshake and went their separate ways. Issei's room. The brown-haired teen woke up suddenly. Silently freeing both of his arms from the 2 sleeping girls lying on either side of him, he sat up and got out of the bed. What was that? He thought whilst rubbing his forehead. I just had some crazy dream that was so vivid, like a vision or something, but I can't remember what the hell happened in it. Hey there, partner, greeted Drake. Do you have a moment? Oh, hi Drake. Yeah, just let me get a glass of water, Issei consented. A minute or so later, he was sat at his desk with a glass of the clear liquid in his hand. What is it you want to talk about, buddy? I think it's time I told you more about myself and the White One, the Welsh Dragon began. Thanks to Ichigo's training, you are a lot stronger than you would have been on your own, so it's safe to assume that you'll be running into the White One soon. Listen up, partner, because this may take a while. All right, I'm listening. Let's hear what you've got to say. The next day, Kuo Academy. As far as high school days went, things had passed more or less normally. The only exceptions were Kiba's mysterious absence, which caused a panic attack amongst the female population and was a hot topic for the daily gossip, with all sorts of stories and suggestions being made to explain it. The other was Issei's somewhat erratic behavior. The resident pervert had been unusually quiet and lost in thought. Ichigo guessed that whatever the thing plaguing his mind was, it had something to do with Kiba's current situation. He wouldn't pry into it though, he respected Issei's privacy. If the brown-haired pawn wanted him to know, then he'd tell him. Ichigo, it would be wise to stay alert, advised Zangetsu. The battle against Kokabiel will be sooner more likely than later. I know. It'll happen even quicker too if the Gremory group end up doing something, the spiky-haired Soul Reaper mentally responded. Ha! With the kind of luck you have, King, the battle's probably gonna take place tonight or something, his inner hollow chipped in. Ichigo sighed. I'd say don't jinx things, but you probably already have. Besides, you're kind of right too. Kuo Academy rooftop. Ichigo sat down on the floor with his bento in hand. Kuro and Nina were accompanying him. As usual, the substitute Soul Reaper had cooked his own food, however Nina had prepared her own and Kuro's lunches herself today, saying that she didn't want Ichigo to be the one always taking care of their meals. The trio quietly opened their respective boxes and began to eat. This is really good, Nina, Kuro complimented. Not to the impossible level that Ichigo can somehow reach, but still really enjoyable. Good enough to be served in a professional restaurant. Nina smiled at her fellow fragment. Thanks, I'm glad you like it. If that's really the case, then maybe I should get you to cook more often, Ichigo proposed. I suppose a little variety in who does the food would keep things nice. I don't mind doing that, the dark blue-haired girl said in approval. I actually kind of enjoy it, and it'll take some of the responsibility off your shoulders too. Hearing footsteps coming their way, they turned their heads to see a certain Issei Hyudo walking over to them looking a little nervous. He was checking his surroundings, as though trying to make sure that no one was following him. Hey, he greeted in a slightly apprehensive tone upon finally reaching them. There's something that I wanted to ask you guys. What is it, Issei? The orange-haired teen inquired. We'll consider your request when we know what it is. Fair enough, I guess. The pawn sat down too. I was wondering if you three would be willing to come with me after school to try and help Kiba with his problem. That's a little vague, Issei, Kuro told him. Mind elaborating a bit more? Well, despite him being the school Prince Charming, I see Kiba as a friend. That's why I don't want him going into this and trying to haul everything by himself. Issei gave a nervous chuckle. I wanted to go look for Irina and Zenovia after school to see if they were willing to work with me or Kiba, and if they would be able to give one of the Excalibur fragments after they've recovered them so that he can destroy it. Ichigo, Kuro and Nina took a few seconds to consider what he was requesting. Does Rias know about this? Nina asked. The brown-haired devil tensed up a bit. No, Bucho doesn't know anything about this. I don't like pulling a secret up on her like this, but I can't risk telling her. She wouldn't allow it. You serious about doing this? Ichigo asked. Totally, Issei answered without a trace of hesitation. His eyes had a look of resolute determination in them too. In that case, you can count me in, declared Kuro. I'm not tied with anyone either, so there aren't any repercussions for me. Plus, with the way our blonde knight is going, he's liable to get himself killed. Same goes for me, said Ichigo with a serious face. I'll help you out. I'll come along too, Nina stated. Issei gained a large, sincerely happy smile. Thanks, guys. This really means a lot to me. He stood back up. There's just one more person I need to talk to. Meet me outside the train station after school ends. He quickly turned around and walked away, presumably to find this other person he mentioned. Outside Kuo train station. Ichigo, Kuro and Nina were stood outside the building where Issei had told them to meet, all three still garbed in their school uniforms. Their little fragment friend, Shadow, was as usual inhabiting Kuro's shadow. Hey guys, sorry for being a little late, they heard the Gremory Pawn's voice call out to them. Turning to look, they caught sight of Issei walking towards them with a rather put-off-looking Soji trudging behind him. Oi, Hyudo, said Soji once the two had arrived at where the others were. You still haven't told me why I'm being dragged along. In fact, you haven't even told me what it is that you're pulling. Hey, sorry about that, man, Issei apologized. Anyway, the others already know, so I'll fill you in. However, before Issei could say anything further, Nina spoke out. Hold on, Issei, did you by any chance invite Koneko along to this? No, why? The brown-haired teen replied in confusion. I was just wondering why she's hiding behind that bush over there, said Nina. All heads turned towards the bush that the navy-haired girl had just indicated too. A patch of white hair rose up from the cover of the greenery, soon followed by a face. It seems that I have been caught, Koneko stated monotonously. Now with the rook standing with the rest of the group, Issei continued. So, as I was about to tell you, Soji, we're here to try help Kiba with his current problem. I was right, said Koenko. You are doing this to help Yuto-senpai. You didn't tell Bucho about this, did you? Issei asked, suddenly worried. No. Issei visibly calmed at the petite girl's response. Oi, oi. Just what the hell is going on with Kiba? And what crazy thing are you trying to pull that you wouldn't want your MSTR to know about? Well, you see Soji, it's something like this. Issei then proceeded to tell his fellow pawn about Kiba's longing for revenge against the Excalibur fragments and his plan to help him achieve it. No, no. I refuse to do something as insane as this. Soji exclaimed and turned around to bolt off. At least, he would have if Koneko hadn't grabbed the back of his shirt in an iron grip. Let go me, he protested. You don't understand. Kaicho will kill me if she finds out about this. Your MSTR is kind and strict, but mine is just strict and strict. Ichigo grabbed a hold of the panicking teen's shoulder, snapping him out of his desperate struggle. Hey, the least you could do is hear the full thing out and Kiba's reason for wanting vengeance, then you can decide if this is worth doing or not, the spiky-haired Soul Reaper told him. Soji sighed in defeat. Fine, I'll tag along, for now anyway. Thanks, said Issei appreciatively. But before we get Kiba, we need to find Irina and Zenovia to get their cooperation first. All the others nodded in understanding, and the group set off to search for the pair of young exorcists. Hopefully, the task wouldn't be too difficult. They didn't have to look for very long. Soon after starting, they caught sight of their intended targets, who were trying to ask some of the locals for spare change or food. They seemed to be having a debate about cutting up a painting of a fake saint to earn some cash. Their little argument ended when both of their stomachs growled out audibly from hunger. Hey, Issei greeted somewhat awkwardly when he stepped up to them from behind, giving the two a slight scare. We were just about to grab some food, do you guys want to join us? You look pretty hungry. At the offer of nourishment, the two girls gained sparkles in their eyes and nodded eagerly. For some reason, the brown-haired pawn suddenly gained a feeling of overwhelming regret. Local diner. So this is Japanese cuisine? It's simply marvelous. Zenovia stated whilst she shoveled some food down her throat. It's so delicious. I know, agreed Irina, eating in a similar manner and at the same pace. This is the food of my home country, it's the best. Everyone else from the group watched the previously starving girls in awe as they wolfed down dish after dish at light speed. Issei was crying slightly on the outside and dying pitifully on the inside. These two had blown his full month's allowance and some the cash that he had saved up. His poor wallet was going to lose a lot of its contents just from this one outing. DMNU Kiba, the Red Dragon Emperor thought miserably. This is what happens when I try to help you. Why? Why? Noticing his fellow teen's distraught expression, Ichigo tapped Issei on the shoulder to get his attention. These two are going to end up killing all your money, man. I'll pay for everything that they've eaten, all right? Issei gave the Soul Reaper a tearful smile. Thank you. Thank you so much, you've saved me and my wallet. No problem. After the church duo had finally finished eating to their fill, their faces became a bit downcast. I know that we were starving and needed food, but was it really okay to accept help from a devil? Zenovia asked with a troubled expression. We've ended up selling our souls, said Irina sadly. No you haven't, Issei snapped at his childhood friend. Geez, you guys could at least show a little more appreciation, especially after killing my poor wallet. You're right, agreed Irina. I'm sorry about that, and thank you for the food. While the others were conversing, Ichigo felt that something was amiss, but couldn't pinpoint what it was. Hey, King, his inner hollow called. There's a fragment nearby. Not that nemesis. Guy, but still stronger than the average cannon fodder. Hey Issei, he interrupted. You guys carry on with your little meeting. Kuro, Nina, Shadow, come with me, there's a fragment to deal with. The Red Dragon Emperor nodded in understanding whilst the three fragments rose from their seats to accompany him. Outside, fountain. The four of them approached an area not too far from the diner which had a large fountain as the main attraction. Nobody else seemed to be around. Be careful everyone, there's a blank zone in my senses near the fountain, Nina warned. It's probably some kind of barrier that the fragment set up. Thanks for the heads up, said Ichigo. His well-trained instincts suddenly picked up on something. Get ready, something's coming. Shadow, grow to your battle form. His order was proven to be for good reason, since 5 dark figures landed around them soon after. They looked something like a large lizard crossed with a praying mantis. The vast majority of their bodies were reptilian and humanoid, but their forearms, or forelegs, were scythe blades that looked like a mantis' arms. Also, their yellow eyes were large and oval in shape, and they all had a set of twin, backwards-facing antennae that protruded from the back of their heads. The orange-haired teen materialized his Zanpakuto and shifted to his Soul Reaper attire. Following his example, Kuro summoned his Diablo sword, and Nina became clad in her sleek armor that was surrounded by a frosty air. Ichigo, these beings have a similar presence to the fragments, however they are not complete you could say, informed Zangetsu. Similar to the soldiers created by the fragment that was with Nemesis. You 3 deal with these foot soldiers, instructed Ichigo. I'm going after the main thing that made them in the barrier field. Alright, leave it to us, assured Kuro, deflecting a strike from one of them and hopping out of its follow-up attack. Without further ado, the substitute Soul Reaper dashed through the boundary of the barrier. What he saw inside looked similar to the lizard-mantis hybrids outside, but was twice as large and had an extra pair of blade arms under its primary arms. Also, it had what seemed to be some kind of large, amber-colored bulb or pod on its back, within which he could make out the body of another soldier, albeit smaller than the ones his friends were fighting. The fragment gave a screeching roar as Ichigo held Zangetsu at the ready and fixed the monster with a strong glare. Both fighters dashed at each other to initiate their duel. Local diner. I see, said Kiba, who was sitting next to Issei. After convincing Irina and Zenovia to let them help, due to the blue-haired exorcist finding a loophole and saying that they weren't taking help from a devil, but from a dragon and neutral warrior, Ichigo, the pawn had called Kiba and filled him in. Although, having to team up with 2 church exorcists and being given their permission to destroy the Excalibur fragment makes it seem somewhat lacking, the knight commented. Disappointing even. Oh, do you have a problem with our current agreement? Inquired Zenovia with a raised eyebrow and smirk. Hey, said Issei, trying to calm the pair down. Let's not fight, all right? We have a common goal here. But Kiba-san, just why is it that you want to destroy the Excalibur fragments in the first place? Inquired Irina. The blonde's gaze hardened, although it wasn't directed at the chestnut-haired girl herself. Because my comrades and fellow test subjects in that accursed project were mercilessly slaughtered just for the fact that they couldn't use that DMN sword. The Excalibur project, said Irina with a light frown. But due to that project we were able to get much more people who can use the holy sword fragments. That doesn't in any way make what they did right, countered Kiba. You're right, Kiba, agreed Zenovia with a sympathetic look. However, you have to realize that the project you were involved in wasn't sanctioned by the church and was classed as one of the greatest atrocities ever committed. It was a solo project by a man who was exiled when word got out of it, the one known as the genocide Archbishop, Valpa Galilei. Valpa? Galilei, repeated Kiba softly. He gave the teenage exorcist a small smile of appreciation. Thank you for that information, I was unaware. You're welcome. Seeing that things had smoothed out somewhat, Issei decided that it was a good time to move on. All right, now that that's settled, the pawn stated. Let's get on with our plan. Outside, fountain. Kuro stabbed his blade into the gut of one of the partial fragments as it pounced at him. SWNGNG outwards, he cut through its body and threw it away from himself. The creature gave a weak gurgle before disintegrating into black misty particles. Spinning around, he smashed his fist into the snout of another one that had tried to sneak up on him from behind. Shadow cleaved through one of the others with his claws as he lunged at it, shredding it apart. Like the one Kuro had cut down, it disintegrated into misty black particles. It turned its head to look at Nina. She had completely frozen 2 of the monsters in 2 separate blocks of ice. Then, within the ice itself, she formed multiple spears of ice that impaled themselves into the frozen captives before the ice blocks shattered into pieces, leaving the mutilated reptilian creatures to fade away into nothingness. The remaining one soldier was powerfully kicked in the back by Kuro before he swiftly decapitated it. Even though all their enemies had been dealt with, they kept their guard up in case any more decided to show up whilst Ichigo finished off the main unit. Inside the barrier, Ichigo pulled back to avoid a swing from his opponent's curved blades. The teenage Soul Reaper had managed to hack off 2 of the fragment's arms, one from each side. Seeing that the thing in its back pod had almost reached full maturity, he flash-stepped over to behind his enemy and unleashed a Getsuga Tensho. The crescent wave of light blue energy sliced through the pod, terminating the growing creature inside and spilling out some kind of amber liquid that gushed like water. The fragment roared in fury and tried slamming Ichigo with its tail. However, the orange-haired teen perceived the incoming attack and dodged. Not intending to give the fragment a chance to do anything further, Ichigo rushed it with a furious flurry of precise and powerful slashes. He hacked off the remaining 2 arms, then its tail as it tried to strike him, and finally released a Getsuga at point-blank range, cleaving his enemy into 2. The barrier lifted after the fragment's demise, revealing the spiky-haired protector to his allies. Seeing their de facto leader safe, they all let up their guard and reverted to their initial appearances. Ichigo too dismissed his Zanpakuto and shifted back to his civilian attire. With a nod of agreement between them, the group began heading back to the diner to meet up with the others. Outside the diner, having decided on their course of action, Issei, Koneko, Kiba, Soji, Irina, and Zenovia were waiting outside the diner for the rest of their group. Koneko caught sight of Ichigo and the others approaching. "Ni-san is here," she informed the others monotonously. "Hey there, Issei," Ichigo greeted when he was in front of them. "You guys come up with anything?" "Yeah, we did actually," Issei confirmed. He then proceeded to tell the substitute and their fragment friends about their plan of disguising as church members and splitting into groups. Kiba approached Ichigo. "I'll try not to do anything rash, but I can't make any promises," Kiba stated. "Well, that's better than nothing, I suppose," Ichigo conceded. They were all ready to begin their operation when Zenovia suddenly called out to the resident pervert. "Oh, Issei Hayado, I just remembered something," she told him. "You can take this as thanks for the meal, as well as proof of our cooperation. The White One has already awakened." "What, seriously?" Issei said in slight shock. "Yes," the blue-haired girl confirmed. "I've heard that he's also a very strong fighter and already has his balance breaker." "All right, thanks for the heads up," Issei stated. "But right now, let's focus on the task at hand." They ended up splitting into 3 groups. The Devils were one group, the Church Duo were another, and Ichigo and the Fragments were the 3rd group. Besides Irina and her partner, the others had donned typical clergy uniform and set off. At the moment, Ichigo and his group were walking along their designated route. Night had already fallen, so there weren't really many other people about. They continued moving through the empty side streets and alleyways without any encounters. A sudden fluctuation blinked in the teenage Soul Reaper's senses, but he couldn't pinpoint it. "Ichigo, it's Issei and his group," Nina informed. "It looks like they've drawn out whoever they were searching for and are now fighting." "You've got some good sensory abilities, Nina," Kuro complimented. "All right, grab a hold of my arms and brace yourselves," Ichigo ordered. "I'll get us there quickly." Nina grasped the orange-haired substitute's right arm while Kuro grabbed his left and held Shadow, who was in his normal, small, form, with his free hand. In a blur of movement, Ichigo started flash-stepping towards Issei's group's location. He was holding back for his friend's sake so that they wouldn't become too disorientated from the high-speed travel. At the same time, Issei, Koneko, and Soji were observing Kiba having a sword fight against the crazy ex-priest, Fried Zelzen. The young Red Dragon Emperor had already given some boosted energy to Kiba, and Soji had attached an energy line from his sacred gear to Fried's leg, preventing his escape. Things seemed to be going well for the blonde Gremory Knight when an old man suddenly appeared and verbally helped Fried to break Soji's line. Then, the church duo also arrived and revealed that the old man was in fact Valpa Galilei. Valpa Galilei! Kiba shouted. I am a survivor of your Holy Sword project. I will avenge my fallen comrades. Oh, there was a survivor, remarked Valpa. Well, not that it's much of an issue. Freed, we need to return to our base. Ichigo and the others appeared on scene, prepared for a confrontation. Upon seeing Ichigo, Valpa seemed intrigued. Spiky orange hair, a large cleaver-like sword and a black shihakusho, the old man observed. I see, so you are the one who he was talking about. His statement caught everyone's attention. Who told you about me? Ichigo asked, having an uneasy feeling about the answer. A mysterious being who recently offered us his assistance and calls himself Nemesis, Valpa replied. Ichigo, the Fragments and the Gremory members' eyes widened in shock at the name. Anyway, we need to be taking our leave now. Freed. On it, replied the psychotic youth before taking out a small sphere and throwing it down. A bright light momentarily blinded the group, allowing Valpa and Freed to make their getaway. Come back here. Zenovia demanded, giving chase. Zenovia, wait for me. Irina exclaimed as she followed after her friend. I won't let you get away. Kiba declared as he too ran after them. Kiba, wait. He shouted after the knight, but it was too late. Oh man. Suddenly, an unexplainable feeling of dread overcame both Issei and Soji. So, Issei, do you care to explain just what you were doing? Asked Rias, a malicious smile on her face. Soji, I hope you can explain yourself, said Sona darkly as she regarded her pawn with a cold glare. Both boys turned pale at the promise of pain present in their respective masters' faces. Soji, I'm sorry for bringing this on you, Issei apologized sincerely. It's all right, man, but thanks, Soji responded. Deciding to help out the two doomed pawns and hopefully get them some slack, the teenage Soul Reaper strode up to the two kings. Don't be too harsh on them, Ichigo said to Rias and Sona, successfully getting their attention. I partly pressured Soji into coming along on this and actually helped Issei to set this up. As for Koneko, she was following us after school to find out what we were doing. We kind of just pulled her into it too. Both pawns looked at Ichigo with thankful and tearful expressions on their faces. The snow-haired rook didn't say anything, but sent her older brother figure an appreciative glance. Ichigo? Why would you do that? Inquired the red-headed heiress. I too would like to know that, Sona seconded. Let's just say that I was concerned that Kiba would do something stupid, maybe even get himself killed, in his aimless questing for vengeance. While I intend to stay a neutral force, I'm not one to just stay on the side and let a friend walk to his death. In that case I suppose it can't be helped, sighed Rias. Right, Sona? I'll allow this to slide only this one time, the student council president stated. Consider yourself lucky, Soji. Yes, Kaicho. Rias turned to her peerage members. Well, looks like you're off the hook from 1,000 magic reinforced spankings, Issei, she told her pawn. Would you really have done that to me, Bucho? Issei asked fearfully. Rias smiled at him. Of course. As your MSTR, I need to DSPLN you when necessary. Anyway, take care of yourselves, Issei, Soji, Ichigo said in farewell as he turned around to leave. Kuro, Nina, and Shadow began following him. Rias, let me know if anything big comes up. Ichigo's room. The orange-haired teen was lying down in his bed, sleeping soundly. Once again, he found himself, or rather his consciousness, in the iridescent realm of the dimensional gap. Turning around, he saw a large red dragon looking at him. Hey there, Great Red, Ichigo greeted casually. Hello again, Ichigo, Great Red replied. It would seem as though I was correct, Ophis seems to have some kind of interest in you. So that little girl I saw before, was that actually Ophis? Ichigo asked. That is the most likely answer, the colossal dragon told him. So, is there any specific reason why you brought me here? Not any reason in particular, although I will inform you that if you keep up with your current training, you should be able to attain Balance Breaker before too long. Oh, thanks for the alert. It seems that something is taking place. Farewell, until we meet again. Ichigo woke up from his sleep and sat up in his bed. He heard the sound of his phone ringing on his desk and got out to pick it up and answer. Yeah, who is it? Sorry to disturb you, Ichigo, came Akino's voice. But we have quite a situation here at school. Kokabiel is here. All right, I'm on my way, Ichigo replied, already shifting his attire. The others already know, Akino told him. Konya woke them up and let them know when we contacted her. She's here with us, but you'll need to bring Kuro and Nina. Got it. After getting Kuro, Nina, and Shadow, they began speeding in the direction of Kuo Academy to provide help. Suddenly, a cloaked figure landed in their path and drew his sword, immediately clashing against Ichigo. The two struggled before disengaging and pulling back. Nemesis, said Ichigo neutrally. Good to see you again, Ichigo, Nemesis replied in a slightly cheery-sounding tone. So you're in league with the fallen angels? Ichigo questioned. Me? No, the opposing fragment refuted. Kokabiel's pulling a solo op. I just joined because I knew I'd get to square off against you. Guys, carry on to Kuo Academy, ordered Ikjio. I'll deal with this guy. Go on, I won't stop you, assured Nemesis. All I'm interested in is this battle. We'll fill in the others about this, said Nina. Thanks, replied Ichigo. Kuro, Nina, and Shadow took off, leaving the two combatants on their own. Both sprang forward and slashed, locking blades once more. Get ready, Ichigo, Nemesis stated. This time it's going to be way more intense. Bring it on, I'll cut you down anyway. Chapter 21. Battle on two fronts. Kuo Academy. The Gremory Peerage stood just outside the barrier that Sona and the school council had erected. Man, I can't believe that Kokabiel is actually here right now, Issei murmured. Sona, how's the situation? Rias inquired. It's not too good, Rias, the council president informed her. This barrier should prevent any stray attacks from reaching outside, but Kokabiel can easily break it if he gets serious. Seriously? Even though all you guys are keeping it up? Issei remarked in disbelief. That's the level of the enemy we're facing, Rias told him in a serious tone. Can we even take on someone like that? Issei asked his left arm, specifically Drake. Of course, the dragon answered. Even if it means I have to turn most of your body into that of a dragon in order to give you the power needed for it. If it somehow still isn't enough despite that, then the damage inflicted will keep him frozen for a good while until help arrives. Are you going to call your brother? Sona asked. Why should I? I don't see you asking for your sister, Rias responded. Sona gave a wry smile. Yes, well, I'm sure we both know the complications involved with doing something like that. On the other hand, I don't think that your brother would cause such an issue. Akino walked up to the Gremory heiress. I've already contacted Surzek Summer. He said he'll be able to arrive here in around 40 minutes. Akino, exclaimed Rias in astonishment. Why would you go do something like that? Especially without telling me? Rias, I know that you don't want to have to rely on your brother or trouble him, the raven-haired queen stated. But this isn't an enemy that we can safely deal with on our own. Please, even if just this once, let's rely on the power of our Mao. I suppose it can't be helped, Rias sighed. Thank you for understanding, said Akino. Rias turned to face the rest of her peerage minus Kiba. Our opponent is a Cadre-class fallen angel, Kokabiel, she announced. He wishes to ruin our peaceful lives and initiate another great war. That is something we cannot allow. This is our home. That is why we cannot fail. All right. I'm ready for this, Bucho. Issei declared, summoning the red gauntlet of his sacred gear. I will defend our peaceful lives, Koneko stated. I'm sure that Yuto-senpai will come too. Then let's go, my beloved servants. Rias proclaimed, leading her peerage through the barrier to face the fallen angel general. With Ichigo. Getsuga Tensho, the orange-haired teen roared, launching a black wave of energy at Nemesis who hastily dodged it. Both of them were dueling in the air, where there were no terrain restrictions. Ichigo was already in Bankai and his fragment opponent was in the powered form that gave him the increased purple coloring and wings. Nemesis fired a small volley of purple energy orbs at the substitute Soul Reaper, making him speed across the sky to avoid them. Ichigo flash-stepped next to Nemesis and brought his blade down in a strong overhead slash. The fragment blocked it using the flat side of his own sword, but he was still forced down and away from where Ichigo was floating. As usual, your raw strength is impressive, he complimented the teen. I don't need your flattery, Ichigo countered. Just get out of my way. Sorry, but I feel like enjoying myself for a bit longer. I'm sure that your little group of friends can manage without you for a while. The two of them charged at each other and clashed again, locking metal against metal. Red outlined black Getsuga energy began coursing through Ichigo's Zanpakuto. In response, dark purple energy began to coat Nemesis' blade. There was an explosion of black and purple energy, soon followed by the two of them exiting the resulting dust cloud from opposite ends. Not wasting any time, the teenage Soul Reaper sped towards his foe and blitzed him with a furious onslaught of strikes, stabs and slashes. The fragment tried to evade or parry as many as he could, but the majority of Ichigo's attacks still landed on his body, damaging his natural armor. In a bid to get some breathing space, Nemesis hurled a small and hastily formed yet stable orb of energy into his opponent's torso, knocking him back. Ichigo quickly recovered from the surprise attack and was about to dash back in when he saw Nemesis holding his sword up high and forming a large ethereal skull of purple-tinted energy. Acting immediately, he began gathering energy into his own weapon in order to prepare an equally powered Getsuga Tensho, if not stronger. Like in their previous battle, Nemesis flung the monstrous skull towards Ichigo, its fanged jaws open wide. With a look of calm determination on his face, the spiky-haired teen swung his obsidian weapon forwards, releasing a colossal Getsuga Tensho wave that matched the skull in size. The black energy ended up smothering the purple skull and there was another explosion in the air, but it carried on moving in Nemesis' direction. Seeing the incoming threat, the fragment rapidly dashed out of the way. What he didn't anticipate, however, was Ichigo appearing at his right in a flash and bringing his black Zanpakuto down on his shoulder, strong. The blade cut into his armored body, but he was smacked away by the force of the hit before it could penetrate any deeper. When Ichigo raced after his body, Nemesis countered with a diagonal slash. He succeeded in making the teen stop his motion and scored a light cut across his abdomen too. Thinking fast, Ichigo summoned his shock burner onto his hands, surprising his enemy since he hadn't used or even revealed his sacred gear during their previous encounter. Without letting the opportunity go to waste, the black-clad teen shot a bolt of lightning into the fragment's chest and sent him hurtling towards the ground. Before he hit the floor though, Nemesis managed to right himself and landed on his feet, albeit creating small cracks when he did so. Interesting, the fragment commented. Are you taking this battle seriously now? I'm just trying to get you out of my way quicker, Ichigo retorted. Using more force seems like the only way to make that happen. Well then, in that case I'll up the ante, Nemesis replied. I don't want things to end too quickly. His wings took on a more ethereal, energy-based appearance and flared out a little. The purple blade edge of his sword also began to glow. Giving a small growl out of irritation, the teenage protector charged towards his opponent, who met him in the same manner, ready for a fresh assault. Kuo Academy. Issei dived out of the way as he dodged an incoming fireball. He then sidestepped a claw swipe from another enemy and kicked it away, and Kuro promptly sliced it into pieces. He and the others of the Gremry peerage as well as Kuro, Nina, and Shadow were facing off against a Cerberus that Kokabiel had summoned. There were also a fair number of the foot soldiers that they knew were generated by Nemesis' other fragment ally, with a new type being included this time that possessed murky yellow sections and eyes instead of maroon or navy blue, and they had greater physical strength than either of the two types. Luckily for him and his fellow peerage members, their own fragment comrades were efficiently dealing with those, letting them concentrate on the Cerberus. Kuro and Nina were the main ones on the offensive, cutting down or, quite literally, icing them, whilst Shadow acted as a guard for Aisha, ripping any enemy that got too close to ribbons. They needed to deal with the Mutt and partial fragments quickly, especially since Valpa was merging 4 of the Excalibur fragments into one for Freed, and the fact that Kokabiel had activated a magic circle that would destroy Kuo in the next 30 minutes. The brown-haired teen charged up some of his magical power for his ranged skill, readying his fist to punch it at the massive monster. He already had about 5 boosts, and a relatively small-scale dragon shot like the one he was doing would probably reduce 2 boosts worth. Oi! Chew on this, you oversized mutt! Dragon shot, he roared as he blasted the technique forward. His outburst had gained the creature's attention, making it turn towards him only for its center head to be hit by the dragon shot and get moderately damaged as well as slightly dazed. Its 3 heads roared in fury after the pain and disorientation had subsided. Before it could retaliate, however, it was hit by a blast of destruction followed by a bolt of thunder courtesy of Rias and Aquino, making it howl in pain. It still didn't kick the bucket though, growling at the group menacingly after recovering. "Issei!" Rias called out. "Yes, Bucho," the pawn inquired once she landed near him. "I need you to charge up your power, then transfer it to me, enough to destroy the Cerberus," she instructed. "All right," he agreed. "I'm just going to need some time to build that amount up." "We'll get you that time," Rias stated resolutely. "Koneko!" The petite girl dashed over to the huge canine with surprising speed that had resulted from when Ichigo trained their group. She delivered a powerful uppercut to the Cerberus side, knocking it down before giving it a strong kick and making it roll away a little, flattening some partial fragment soldiers along the way. "I don't really like dogs," she monotoned in her usual manner. "Especially mean ones like you." Said dog got back up and was about to make a move when it got hit by the attacks of Kuo Academy's 2 great beauties. Issei noticed the green gem of his sacred gear blinking and heard a small matching sound coming from it too. "Ooh? What's that about?" he thought. "It's letting you know that you've now gathered enough energy to let Rias Gremory or Aquino Himajima destroy the Cerberus if you transfer it to either one of them," Drake informed. "Really? Since when did it have such a convenient system?" Issei asked his tenant. "It developed recently," the dragon told him. "Your sacred gear is constantly evolving and adapting according to your will and wishes." "Bucho! I have enough power for you or Aquino-san to destroy that thing," he shouted out. "Good. Can you transfer it to both of us?" the crimson-haired teen requested. "You can, but they'll only get 70 or 80% of the power each," Drake informed his host. "Yeah, but both of you will only get 70 or 80%, Issei relayed to them. "That's fine," Rias declared. The Red Dragon Emperor cocked his left fist and punched the air in the direction of his 2 female comrades. "All right, boosted gear gift," he proclaimed. Emerald green energy phased out of the sacred Geese gem and washed over the 2 airborne girls, transferring the stored dragon's power to them and giving them green auras. They both gave a little mmm when it happened. "This power, yes, with this we'll definitely be able to do it," Rias said. "Aquino, let's finish this." "Yes, Bucho," the queen agreed. The 2 of them rose higher into the air and lined up side by side, hands out forward. Almost as if sensing the danger it was in, the monster they were facing prepared itself to leap out of the way. It would have, if not for 4 swords manifesting and impaling into each of its limbs, pinning it into place. "I won't let you get away that easily," Kiba proclaimed as he entered the scene. "Kiba! You finally came," Issei said upon seeing him. "Yes, sorry I'm late, Issei-kun," the blonde knight apologized. He generated another blade and skillfully threw it into the body of an approaching foot soldier, ending its existence. With their target now secured, Rias and Aquino both unleashed a large mass of their respective magic attacks towards it. "Disappear," they shouted in unison. When the high-powered skill struck the creature, it was more or less instantly vaporized, along with any other enemy units that were nearby. Coincidentally, Kuro, Nina, and Shadow had also finished off the last of the partial fragments. They heard the sound of a steady clapping and saw that it was the fallen angel who was doing so. Not bad. Weak as they may be, your powers are impressive, including those interesting friends of yours Ria's Gremory and her peerage, he commented. But let's see how you do against more than one at the same time. Clicking his fingers, Kokabiel summoned a further 2 of the 3-headed dogs. Entertain me some more. What? He has more of those things? Issei exclaimed. Just one was troublesome enough, DMN it. We can't afford to give in now. Ria stated fiercely. There's too much at stake. Right, Nina agreed. At least there's not a few dozen foot soldiers running around this time though, so it should be easier in that regard. Suddenly, one of the Cerberuses howled in agony as BLD was spilled from one of its front legs. They turned to see Zenobia nearby, holding her Excalibur destruction at the ready. I've come to back you up, she announced. The power of a holy sword, it deals critical damage to monsters. Let's take care of this enemy together. Issei grinned widely as he underwent a boost. All right, let's do this. With Ichigo. Sparks lit up and flew across the sky as the 2 fighters repeatedly crossed and clashed with each other. While not sporting any serious wounds, both of them had various small cuts and grazes or larger injuries that were just merely flesh wounds. Ichigo gave battle cry as he simultaneously fired a black Getsuga coupled with a large crimson fireball at Nemesis. The fragment weaved around the twin attacks, barely avoiding them, then used the flat of his sword to block the teen's lightning-infused punch. Instead of pulling away, Ichigo opted to blast the lightning out, pushing his enemy away as well as damaging him. Surrounding his form in the crimson Suzaku flames, the substitute Soul Reaper flew forward and moved straight through the rather sizable energy ball that Nemesis had flung his way, suffering little to no damage. Keeping the fires burning around him, he took a swing at Nemesis. The dark being parried the sword strike and responded by sending his energy-coated right fist at Ichigo's chest. The orange-haired teen flash-stepped away and raised Tensor Zangetsu out towards the fragment with the tip facing him like a gun. Shouting out the name of his signature technique, he let out a continuous stream of it from the tip that raced towards his opponent. Nemesis brought his wings forward and folded them closed in front of himself in a makeshift shield. He felt the impact as the Getsuga wave crashed into them and began to slowly force him back through the air. Struggling against the constant pressure, he eventually managed to push it back somewhat by forcefully unfurling his wings out and quickly throwing an energy orb at it, then darting out of the way before it overcame his small attack and carried on past him. Sensing that his enemy had avoided the Getsuga, Ichigo stopped fueling it, causing it to dissipate away into the air. The spiky-haired Soul Reaper zoomed over to the fragment's location, however this time his adversary was prepared for the sudden strike. Nemesis hopped out of the stab's way and countered by brutally smacking his wing into Ichigo's side. Following it up, he gave a right hook to the teen's head and blasted a shot of dark purple energy into his body, knocking him away. Not wanting to give the Protector a chance to recover any time too soon, Nemesis sped over to him and fired another dark orb into his abdomen, sending him further away. Ichigo recovered mid-flight and righted himself. The front of his Bankai's attire had become a little ripped, exposing his muscled chest to the air. Taking a deep breath to help recuperate, he set his focus on the dark being again. Surging blue electricity around himself, he formed a lance of lightning in his left hand. Seeing what he was doing, Nemesis began to create a large phantom skull again. The pair threw their respective moves at the other combatant, however just before he released his, Ichigo propelled his lance forth with an extra shot of lightning to give it increased speed and power. The two attacks collided with each other in mid-air and the sparking lance actually broke through the skull and continued for a bit before both of them blew up. Once the dust cleared, the two combatants glared at one another for a moment then sped forwards to continue the battle. Kuo Academy. Everyone was watching in awe as Kiba held up his newly attained balance breaker. A sword that possessed both a white blade and a black one, representing its impossible dual nature of holy and demonic affinities, making it a holy demonic sword. Just moments ago, they'd all witnessed as the Gremory Knight picked up a crystal tossed to him by Valpa Galilei and how the souls of his fallen friends had manifested and consoled him, giving him the strength to let go of his hatred and move on with his new life. In the end, they merged into the demonic sword in Kiba's hand, who was moved to tears, and helped to create his new weapon. Now, he was looking ahead at Freed and the merged Excalibur fragments with an expression of firm resolve and strength. "This is my balance breaker," he said calmly. "The holy demonic sword, sword of the betrayer." "What?" "Holy and demonic," muttered Valpa in disbelief. "How can such a thing be possible? Unless—" "Oi, you're ruining my moment with this awesome Excalibur by pulling out that flashy toy of yours," Freed snapped, gripping the merged sword in his hands tighter and readying it. "Kiba! You can do it!" Issei shouted in encouragement. "Take that great new sword of yours and smash that stupid Excalibur, for you and your friends. Yuto! You are my knight, there's no way that you can lose to a false Excalibur like that." Rias called out. "Yeah, show them that you're beyond any cheap imitations that they come up with." Kuro cheered. "Kiba-san, you can do it!" Aisha shouted happily. Kiba smiled at all the words of encouragement that he was receiving. "Everyone, thank you for all your support." Zenovia walked up to Kiba's side. Knight of Ria's Gremory, the blue-haired exorcist started. "Will you allow me to assist you in this battle?" "Isn't that sword something important that you have to recover?" the blonde knight inquired. "Why help me destroy it?" "It's possible to remake the individual blades again as long as their cores remain," Zenovia explained. "Besides, a sword is only as noble as the one wielding it. Right now, in that person's hands, that so-called Excalibur is nothing but a sword of evil. Even the aura is twisted. It's a strange blade." "I accept your help," Kiba told her. "Let's work together to destroy that blade." "Agreed," said the teenage girl. Stabbing her Excalibur destruction into the ground, she began chanting the names of various saints as a portal appeared with a chained-up sword hilt sticking out of it. Grabbing the hilt, the chain shattered and she pulled out a large navy blue sword with a single-bladed edge and no guard. In that overall regard, it reminded them of Ichigo's large single-edged sword. "This is the holy sword Durandal," Zenovia stated, holding the blade up. "Impossible," Valpa remarked. "My research didn't go into using Durandal." The blue-haired girl smirked. "Unlike Irina, I'm a natural-born holy sword wielder. Durandal was passed on to and accepted me as its user. Although this guy is pretty troublesome and stubborn, it doesn't listen to me half the time, so I have to seal it away in another dimension in order to keep its destructive power sealed." She gained a small but excited smile. "Now then, why don't we see if your merged Excalibur can stand up to my Durandal? Try not to break your sword too soon." "Hey, stop getting so cocky!" Freed barked. "You're forgetting that this sword here is for Excalibur pieces in one. Don't you dare look down on me." The crazy ex-priest charged at the pair of sword wielders with his own weapon prepared to swing. Kiba was the first to dash in and intercept him, blocking his strike. Giving a frustrated glare, Freed pulled back then rushed forward again in a frenzied flurry of rapid attacks. He even went as far as to make his blade invisible after the first few strikes. However, it was all for naught, since Kiba expertly parried and deflected every single one of them. "You won't be able to defeat the power of me and my comrades like that," the knight commented. "And there's no point in turning you blade invisible when I can tell where it is from your unusual bloodlust." He then struck out in a swing of his own and sliced the tip of Freed's sword clean off. Oi, wait a minute," the white-haired psycho said to the heavily cracked and damaged blade in his hands as he stumbled back a few paces. "Aren't you supposed to be the ultimate sacred sword Excalibur? Why are you losing to this pathetic weapon?" "It might have been different if that was the real and original Excalibur," Kiba stated. "But a lowly imitation like that will never be able to break my holy demonic blade." Zenovia took the moment to rush in at Freed. "It's my turn now," she declared, slashing at their opponent. Freed stepped back and dodged. Gritting his teeth and brandishing his sword, he roared, "I'll kill you all." He ran forward and tried to strike at the girl. Zenovia swung her own blade in response to parry it, causing Freed's weapon to shatter into pieces upon contact. Broken in one hit her, she said in a disappointed tone. Well, I suppose that's to be expected from a false Excalibur. Free dropped to his knees, unable to comprehend what had just occurred. No way, it broke. I was supposed to be invincible with that sword, how could this happen? Kiba stepped up to him and knocked him out with a blow to the temple from the hilt of his own sword. The twin sword users then turned to face Valpa, who had been mumbling incoherently the whole time. Of course. That's it, the man suddenly exclaimed. Holy and demonic attributes merging together should be impossible. Therefore, if they suddenly can, like that boy's balance breaker, then that must mean the ones who govern those attributes no longer maintain a hold on it. In that case, in the previous war, not only Dash. He was cut off from rambling on by one of Kokabiel's light spears stabbing him in the gut, making him hack up BLD and fall to the floor. Valpa! You truly are a genius if you were able to figure even that out. The fallen angel floated down to the floor. You were entertaining while it lasted, but I'm afraid that I've grown bored of you. Everyone else was observing the scene in shock. Kokabiel turned to face them. Your various powers are more interesting than I initially thought, he stated. Come, I will be your next opponent. Let's see if you can give me a challenge. With Ichigo. A certain Ichigo Kurosaki raced through the air towards Nemesis, trailing blue sparks of electricity behind him. Upon reaching the masked fragment, he unloaded a barrage of fast-paced hits that were reinforced with Byakko lightning before finishing his combo with a point-blank Getsuga Tensho. Once the black energy dispersed, the fragment was revealed looking worse for wear. There were various cracks over his armor and a few deep gashes that were lazily oozing dark red BLD. He was breathing deeply too, partly from fatigue and partly to assist his recovery from the recent attack. You're even better than I first thought, Nemesis praised. You're a tough guy to kill, Ichigo ambiguously responded. Ha ha, maybe, the dark being agreed. Still, you're running low on time, you know. What do you mean? Ichigo questioned. Oh, I didn't tell you? Nemesis said with feigned innocence. Kokabiel has a magic circle set up to destroy Kuo after a certain time limit. I'd say that there's just a little over 10 minutes left, 13 tops. The orange-haired teen's eyes widened at the revelation. He really couldn't afford to waste any more time with this guy. He needed a burst of raw power to get him out the way at least, then head over to the academy. At that moment, he had a sudden epiphany and dismissed his shock burner. Bringing his left hand up to his face, he made it as though he was grabbing something. Hey, what are you doing? Nemesis asked, mostly rhetorically. Are you lamenting over what I just told you or something? Kuo isn't destroyed just yet, you know, no need to get all depressed. Ichigo didn't bother to give an answer. Instead, he dragged his hand down in a ripping fashion. He didn't summon his mask though, he pulled on more of his hollow reserves, triggering his full transformation. For a few seconds, a large quantity of red outlined black energy covered his form from view. When it cleared, it revealed him in his first full hollow form, the pale white skin reflecting the moonlight and seeming to glow. Nemesis made a sound of surprise before his face was suddenly grabbed by the hollowified Soul Reaper's left hand. Dragging his off-guard enemy along, Ichigo dropped down below and mercilessly smashed the fragment's head into the ground. Flash stepping back up into the air, time seemed to slow down when his inner hollow spoke to him. Hey King, do a Cero to keep him down if not kill him, his pale copy suggested. Don't worry about all the technical stuff, I'll take care of everything this time, you just follow your instincts. Sticking his hand towards the downed fragment with his index and middle fingers pointing out, Ichigo began charging up a glowing crimson orb at his fingertips. When he felt that it was sufficiently charged, he released it as a laser which crashed into Nemesis' body. He had a feeling that his opponent had still managed to survive, but didn't waste any time hanging around to find out. Turning around, he speedily dashed ahead towards the location of Kuo Academy, deactivating his hollowification along the way. His injuries had healed up thanks to the regenerative abilities of his hollow form. He just hoped that he was in good condition to fight Kokabiel and take him down before the town was taken off the earth. Kuo Academy. Kokabiel grabbed Issei's armor-clad left fist before the pawn could punch him again and threw him away towards his other allies. After toying around with their initial attempts, revealing Akino's heritage and telling them the big secret of the previous Great War, they had all gone into a state of shock, temporary mental breakdown in the case of the blonde bishop. But the brown-haired teen had managed to snap them all out of it. After that, they attacked with renewed vigor. That hadn't been so much of an issue though. It was when the boy with the boosted gear shouted about protecting everyone and everything he holds dear and getting some motivation from his MSTR that he suddenly gained an insane boost in power and started dishing it out to the fallen angel general. Kokabiel had been caught off guard and Issei managed to land quite a few decent hits on him that he admitted actually hurt him. However, Kokabiel wasn't one to let that pattern continue and repelled the teen by grabbing him then tossing him back towards the others. Rias was contacted by Sona via Magic Circle. Rias, there's something approaching our location and it's moving fast. Sona warned. Do you know what it is? The redhead asked. No, but it's almost right here. At that precise moment, the barrier over their head shattered into a multitude of shards. Looking up, they saw a figure garbed in black sweeping down towards the ground. The spiky-haired substitute flipped his obsidian blade into a reverse grip hold as he approached the ground. His signature writhing black energy began to spiral out of the sword's vestiges and swirl around the weapon like an ethereal sheath. Giving a roaring shout of Getsuga Tensho, he stabbed his sword into the ground the moment he touched down, unleashing the stored energy into the floor in order to forcefully shatter the magic circle that had been embedded into it, removing the threat of the town getting destroyed. Everyone watched on in surprise as Ichigo stood up straight and heaved his Zanpakuto out of the ground. Apart from the front of his black coat being slightly ruined, he looked completely fine. So, you're the one who that fragment mentioned, Kokabiel stated. He suddenly gained a feral grin. Excellent. That was an impressive display of power just now. Let's see if your combat ability matches it. If what Nemesis said about you is true, then I can finally go all out, even use this little gift that he gave me. Before their very eyes, an intense dark purple aura blasted out of the warmonger then focused itself and became more contained yet concentrated. They all felt his powerful presence increase by bounds, like a pressure that was trying to crush them. Undeterred, Ichigo raised Tensa Zangetsu and held it at the ready. He began to flare out his own spiritual power to match the enemy's, releasing his usual restraints on it. It also had the added bonus of alleviating the oppressive pressure from the others. "Hey King, congratulations," piped his inner hollow. "You've reached it." "Indeed," Zangetsu seconded. "It is time, Ichigo, reveal your strength to this fiend." Maintaining his standard scowl, Ichigo addressed Kokabiel. "You want to see my power? Fine, I'll show you, and beat you down regardless of the little boost that Nemesis gave you." He called upon his shock burner to materialize. "Get ready for this, you DMN crow. Balance breaker. Inferno bolt. Oh make." Ichigo was rushing towards Kuo Academy to help deal with Kokabiel. Kuro, Nina, and Shadow had already gone ahead via Magic Circle with Koneko. Suddenly, Nemesis dropped down into his path. "Ichigo! Fight with me," he challenged. The orang-haired Soul Reaper promptly shifted into his full hollow form without slowing down his movement. Garbing Nemesis by the face, he proceeded to unceremoniously fling the fragment out of the way somewhere to the side. "Stay out of my way. I don't have time to waste with you, moron." Ichigo roared in his hollowified voice, continuing on his path and speeding away, leaving a stunned Nemesis embedded in the side of a nearby building with spinning swirls on his mask instead of his normal eye holes. Chapter 22. The White One appears. Kuo Academy. Maintaining his standard scowl, Ichigo addressed Kokabiel. "You want to see my power? Fine, I'll show you, and beat you down regardless of the little boost that Nemesis gave you." He called upon his shock burner to materialize. "Get ready for this, you DMN crow. Balance breaker. Inferno bolt." What happened next was as though a geyser of pyroelectricity had erupted from Ichigo's position. After about 2 seconds, the vermilion flames darkened to obsidian black and the blue electricity shifted to a red hue. When the energy discharge finished, they saw Ichigo standing there in his Banaki clothing like before, but his sacred gear was different. The twin black gauntlets now reached all the way to, and including, his elbows and sported glowing blue designs in addition to the slight red highlights, which were also glowing. What's more was that he was now equipped with a matching armored boot on each foot that reached and covered his knees. The blue and red part stopped glowing after a moment, leaving the sleek armor a plain midnight black. A balance breaker? Not only that, but it's one for a strange sacred gear too. Interesting, let's see how far its strength goes. Kokabiel challenged, generating a concentrated light sword in his hand. If the stupid crow wants to get roasted and grilled so badly, then why not give it to him, eh Kingy? Ichigo's inner hollow voiced. How about we show him just what you can do with your sacred gear? Let's, was all the spiky-haired teen replied before flickering over to the fallen general's location and dealing him a swift uppercut that was boosted by black fire while the latter was still caught by surprise, snapping his head up and launching him upwards. On a side note, the glowing red designs had reappeared on the gauntlet Ichigo had attacked with. Stabilizing himself in the air, Kokabiel hastily blocked the next strike, a slash from Ichigo's Bankai, using the light sword in his hands. However, he was blasted back towards the floor by a strong torrent of red lightning from the edge of Ichigo's blade before he could get the chance to retaliate. Keeping up the pressure, the orange-haired Soul Reaper dropped towards his opponent with his foot wreathed in black flames. Again, Kokabiel blocked the attack with his light construct. In response, the team made the fire turn into an explosive blast that knocked the fallen angel away. Righting himself in mid-air, Kokabiel rushed towards Ichigo with a shout, his dark purple aura flaring out in tandem with his aggravated state. Forming a second blade of light in his free hand, he set to ruthlessly assaulting Ichigo with a frenzied array of deadly slashes. Using the vastly increased speed provided by his Bankai, Ichigo weaved around all of the attempted hits, only receiving a minor scratch on the left cheek and losing a few strands of hair, then started flashing around Kokabiel and creating multiple after-images. Unable to discern which copy was his real foe, Kokabiel smashed his two light swords together into a single large spear and threw it at the ground in frustration, causing it to explode in an expanding blast of light. Realizing that his friends would be endangered if he didn't neutralize the growing light blast, Ichigo flash-stepped to a few steps in front of them and began channeling a Getsuga Tensho that would be strong enough to take it out. After only a few moments of gathering the swirling black energy into his Zanpakuto, Ichigo swung it out at the approaching hazard, unleashing the move onto it. The contrasting black energy wave crashed into the light-based attack and after a moment or two of struggling against each other, both cancelled each other out. Looking up, the spiky-haired substitute saw Kokabiel at a higher position in the air, a humongous spear of light above him that he was preparing to launch at them. Having other plans, Ichigo dismissed Tensa Zangetsu, but still kept Bankai active, and zipped over to the fallen angel then decked him in the face with a red lightning-infused punch, hearing a grisly crunch as he broke his enemy's nose. Destroying the oversized light spear with another bolt of lightning, he then gave Kokabiel a rapid set of 7 punches while both fists were alight with an ebony blaze. Due to all the damage dealt in the short time, Kokabiel coughed out a rather sizable quantity of BLD after the final strike to his sternum. Not giving his enemy a chance to recover, Ichigo grabbed his opponent's shoulders and slammed his sparking knee into the man's gut twice, then followed it up with a flaming roundhouse kick to his head. While Kokabiel was still disorientated, he flew up higher and generated a large amount of red lightning around his body, which soon took on the form of a large tiger standing on its hind legs. When Kokabiel snapped out of his daze, he looked up at the sound of a shouting battle cry to see Ichigo rapidly descending towards him with both hands above his head and locked together for a hammer strike whilst the tiger-shaped cloak surrounding him was bringing its mighty front paws down at the same time. The moment Ichigo's conjoined fists and the tiger's paws made contact with his foe's skull, the tiger morphed into a crackling mass of electricity that rammed into Kokabiel and slammed him into the ground. As the fallen angel was struggling back up from his imprinted dent, Ichigo gathered a large ball of writhing black flames above his head and cast it down towards him. Mid-flight, the burning sphere metamorphosed into a majestic flaming bird before crashing into its intended target. Everyone else spectated in silent awe. The level of strength that Ichigo was displaying was simply incredible. They had barely been able to land a hit on Kokabeel, whereas the teenage Soul Reaper was tossing him around without breaking a sweat. "He's amazing," Issei observed. "The way he's beating him back so effortlessly. DMN, how does he do it? How does he just pull out all that power and make it seem so easy? I almost can't believe what I'm witnessing," Rias agreed. "That's a Cadre-class fallen angel he's taking on, but it doesn't even seem like that." "Ni-san keeps amazing everyone," Koneko murmured, being careful not to aggravate the wounds she'd received earlier from Kokabeel. "He's strong, but doesn't let it get to his head." "You people have a very powerful ally," Zenobia stated. "It's just as well that he's neutral, otherwise other factions would feel quite threatened." The others nodded silently in agreement to her words. Meanwhile, a heavily burnt and injured Kokabeel was pulling himself back up onto his feet, taking deep, erratic breaths. Despite all the high-caliber damage he'd just been subjected to, he was still capable of fighting, proving his hardiness as someone who survived the previous Great War. It seemed that the boost he had been given by Nemesis was helping him to withstand the damage too. "How? How is this even possible?" he screamed, glaring at the teen floating in the air. "You're just a DMN human, you shouldn't have this kind of power. Your stupid body shouldn't be able to handle it." "My body's always possessed more power than what it can contain," Ichigo nonchalantly retorted. "That's why a large amount of it is always leaking out. Even actively suppressing it only does so much. You're not normal. You can't even be called a human, you freak." Kokabeel shouted, forming another light spear. While his earlier aura was almost completely diminished by now with only a thin covering remaining, it flared up a little in response to his rage. "You're not the first to call me that," the orange-haired teen said calmly as he gently floated down. "Probably not gonna be the last either. In any case, you really picked the wrong guy to mess around with when you tried to go about initiating another war. I told you that I'd beat you down regardless of the little power boost that Nemesis gave you." Spreading out his injured wings, Kokabeel raised himself into the air level with Ichigo, then flung his light spear at the latter. Rematerializing Tensor Zangetsu, the teenage protector effortlessly broke the offending object with a simple swing. "It's a good thing that Azazel gave me permission to kill you," Ichigo stated. "Because you're pretty DMN crazy, as well as annoying. People like you are bad for the current peace, and I happen to enjoy it, thank you very much." "What? Azazel? DMN that pompous fool. He's just happy to sit around all day fiddling with useless things like sacred gears." Kokabeel roared. "What a stupid waste. We're supposed to be the best race, but that idiot would rather lounge about in this stagnant peace instead of fighting. Hey, it's no wonder that you're a pathetic reject who no other fallen angels follow," Ichigo commented. "You'd just get everyone killed for no reason." Like some kind of internal SWCH had just been flipped, an enraged Kokabeel began shooting a full barrage of light spears at him. Keeping his composure, Ichigo swiftly parried and shattered the constructs, his arm and Zanpakuto merely a blur of movement around him. Creating a large spear the size of a bus, the fallen angel hauled it at the substitute Soul Reaper with a furious bellow. Pulling his free left hand back, Ichigo cocked it in preparation to punch and coated it with his Inferno Bolt's twin elements. When the spear was within striking range, he moved his fist forward, breaking apart the light weapon, then shot out the black fire and red electricity towards the fallen angel as an orb of the two swirling energies. Kokabeel gave a cry of pain when it impacted against his abdomen and promptly burst, knocking him out of the sky. "I feel as though there's something I should let you know, you dumb crow," Ichigo said, and he approached the ground not too far from Kokabeel's severely battered form. "I literally gained access to Balance Breaker just now. This is my first time using it, so it's not even fully developed or as strong as it could be." Everyone's eyes went wide after hearing that, particularly the addressed fallen angels. In other words, besides the base boost I get from my sword when using this form, which I'm not even fully drawing out either, I'm beating your sorry but around using only the elemental power and strength provided by my balance breaker. "You're a bloody monster," Kokabeel rasped. He tried a feeble attempt at making another light spear, but simply didn't have the capability anymore. The dark purple aura he possessed at the beginning flickered feebly before snuffing out completely. He couldn't even lift himself off the floor. Maybe, but at least I have values and am willing to protect the peace rather than start a pointless war which will only kill countless innocents and diminish the three factions even further, Ichigo verbally countered. The spiky-haired teen raised his black blade up above his head. He deactivated his new balance breaker, feeling a reasonable toll on his stamina, but didn't let it show, then dismissed his sacred gear fully. Black Getsuga energy with a red outline began coating the sword in preparation for the teenager's trademark technique. Bringing Tensor Zangetsu down, Ichigo released the Getsuga Tensho that washed over Kokabiel's body and obscured him from view. After a few long seconds, Ichigo let up on his signature attack, making the wave of dark energy disperse away into the air. There were no remains of the fallen angel's body. Impressive indeed, came an unknown male voice from above that caught all of their attention. Shifting their gazes upwards, they all caught sight of a figure flying stationary in the sky with the moon shining behind them. Whoever it was, they were clad in draconic armor that looked very similar to Issei's scale mail, but was almost completely white. Another stark difference was the large and glowing blue wings sprouting from the back. Even with the power-halving abilities of my divine dividing, I would have had to be more careful in dealing with Kokabiel after he received that dark boost. He would have made it much harder for me to make contact with him and establish a target to halve the power of. He began to descend from his position. Azazel asked me to come here in case Kokabiel was too much for you to handle and had to be taken down quickly, however it seems that I was unneeded. The armored figure hovered slightly above the surface of the ground and glided over to where Fried's unconscious body lay. I take it that you're the White Dragon Emperor? Ichigo queried. That is correct, the White Dragon Emperor confirmed as he hauled Fried onto his shoulder. He then made his way over to Valpa's corpse. You may call me Albion. Albion put his free arm under the dead man's stomach and lifted him up. Excuse me for asking, but why are you taking those two? Zenobia inquired, taking a step forward from the others so that Albion could see who had asked the question. This exiled exorcist needs to be taken for questioning, he told her. As for the old man's corpse, it needs to be disposed of properly. The new arrival turned around and was about to take his leave when all of a sudden Drake's voice called out from Issei's boosted gear. Are you ignoring me, White One? The Welsh dragon asked. So you are awake, Red One, replied a new voice that spoke from the white-clad figure, specifically coming from the sacred gear wings. Yes, we have both awakened, although it seems that your host is ahead of mine, Drake commented. That would appear to be the case, the White Dragon agreed. These are strange circumstances to meet under, Red One. You aren't giving off any of your usual hostility either. Indeed they are. Your hostility is incredibly low as well, White One, Drake observed. True. Perhaps the times have changed us. It seems that we have both found things more interesting than fighting in this current time round, Drake's rival stated evenly. Let's meet again, Drake. Yeah, let's, Albion. With the conversation between the two dragons now finished, the White Dragon Emperor prepared to leave when he was interrupted again, this time by Issei. Hey, wait a minute, the brown-haired pawn called out. He had a tense expression as the figure turned to face him. If you're here, does that mean that I'm going to have to fight you soon? No, not yet, he answered. This situation isn't very appropriate and you're not yet ready for our fated battle. Get stronger, my rival. After saying those last words, he flew back up into the night sky and disappeared. At last, Ichigo released his Bankai. A veil of red outlined black energy rose up around him and left him in his usual Shikai state when it vanished. With a long, appreciative sigh, he replaced Zangetsu onto his back. He wasn't really exhausted in any physical way, but was just tired out from all the craziness of this one night. You okay? Kuro asked while walking up to him. The other two fragments also started coming over, both in their normal, non-combat appearances. Yeah, the spiky-haired Soul Reaper assured. It's just been one hell of a night though. You can say that again, Nina concurred with a stretch of her arms. A good sleep sounds really nice right about now. Just give me a moment, Ichigo requested. He stepped over to the Gremory peerage, who were welcoming Kiba back and congratulating him on achieving his balance breaker. Hey, are you guys good to deal with all this mess? He inquired, garnering their attention. At that moment, Sona appeared with her own peerage behind her. Don't worry about the school repairs, she told them all. My peerage and I will see to it. Thanks, I guess, Ichigo said to her. By the way, I caused a fair bit of damage on the way here in my skirmish with Nemesis. I'll get somebody to take care of it, the Citri heiress assured. It's the least I could do after you defended this town. All right. Thanks again. Ichigo turned to face Rias and her group once more. You guys done too? Yes, we'll be heading back ourselves, Rias replied. So is it okay for Koneko to come back with us? Of course. Koneko, you can go home with Ichigo. The snow-haired rook nodded in understanding and walked with her older brother back to their other housemates. Come on guys, let's all go home, Ichigo said. They all nodded in agreement with him and began making their way back to their house with the orange-haired teen. Next day, ORC clubroom. Eh? What's she doing here? Issei asked in confusion, pointing to a certain blue-haired girl with a green forelock who was sitting down and drinking tea whilst wearing the school uniform. After all the recent events, she decided to return here as my new knight, Rias announced cheerfully, explaining Zenovia's presence to her pawn and bishop. Wait, so she's a devil now? Issei inquired. That is correct, Zenovia answered, revealing her wings to further prove her statement. I am now a part of this peerage. I am sorry for my previous actions and hope to get along with all of you. I'm very happy that you're here, Zenovia-san, Aisha remarked cheerfully. The blue-haired ex-exorcist faced the blonde former nun. Aisha, I'm very sorry about my earlier statements against you. Considered what we recently found out, I really had no right or backing to call you all those terrible things. Please forgive me. It's okay, I accept your apology and wholeheartedly forgive you, Aisha reassured her. Oh, yeah, I look forward to being friends with you too, Issei added in. Thank you, Zenovia said with a small smile of appreciation. I need to go and sort out my things. I'll see you all later. She started walking towards the door. Zenovia-san, Aisha called out, making the new recruit halt and look back. I'm going to go shopping with some friends later on in the day. Would you like to come as well? Zenovia's golden eyes briefly widened at the offer. She sent Aisha a melancholy smile. Sorry, but I'm going to be quite busy today. Although, maybe I'll tag along next time. Elsewhere in Kuo. One Ichigo Kurosaki had his hands in his pockets as he walked down the street at a leisurely pace. While the school had already been repaired overnight thanks to the efforts of Sona and her student council peerage, he and the others had more or less been given a free day off. Looking around at the complete normality of everything around him, it seemed somewhat surreal that a battle had occurred only last night in which had the town's existence itself at stake. Then again, back when he was on Soul Reaper duty, it seemed slightly surreal that there was a realm invisible to normal humans, in which there had been hollows and the like. Deciding to make a trip to the local sweet shop for a bit of chocolate, he began heading in the establishment's direction. That was when he noticed a familiar figure up ahead at the street corner. A youngish-looking man with black hair that had gold bangs. He was dressed in a kimono that seemed to be on the pricier side of the market, as he had been previously. Hey kid, coincidence running into you here, Azazel greeted. Somehow, I doubt the coincidence part, Ichigo remarked, causing the head-fallen angel to chuckle. So, what's up? First off, congratulations on dealing with that little rogue Kokabiel, Azazel began. Just thought I'd let you know that the three factions are planning to hold a peace meeting sometime soon. I take it you'll be in favor? If you guys are actually aiming towards a coexistent peace, then yeah, I'm for it, the orange-haired teen replied. That's good to know. Azazel started walking off, then paused and turned back to the Soul Reaper. Oh yeah, about those fragment things that you're apparently hunting down. I think there was one not too far from here, about a few blocks away near the riverbank. I'm on it. Thanks for the heads up, Ichigo stated, already moving off at a brisk pace. Hyudo residence. Issei was out in the backyard doing some light exercise. Since Ichigo had trained them for the rating game, he'd made sure to get a small routine going for a daily workout. After all, he wouldn't be much use to his friends and wouldn't be able to protect them if he was the weakest one on the team. Finishing his last press-up, he sat down and took a swig of cool water from the sports bottle standing next to him. Hey, Drake, are you there? He called in a low voice to his left arm. I'm always here, partner, the Welsh dragon responded. What's on your mind? I just wanted to speak to you about the White Dragon Emperor's appearance, the brown-haired teen stated. Since he's here now, does that mean we're going to have to fight soon? I'm not really sure, partner, Drake told him apologetically. This most recent meeting between me and Albion has been different. Neither of us were really in the mood to battle and our hostility towards each other has gone quite low. I see. So that just means it's more of a wild factor, huh? Issei commented. I suppose I wouldn't be so tense if his current level was similar to mine, but he's way ahead of me. He already has his full balance breaker, while I can only gain an incomplete version by offering a sacrifice. About that, started his dragon partner. Since meeting Ichigo, you've gotten much stronger than you would have on your own. Thankfully, he's managed to somewhat tone down your perversion too and sort your priorities out. In other words, your nature and drive are changing, which is affecting the boosted Gi's evolution as a sacred gear. It's began to move off in a new tangent. You should expect some changes, partner. Issei was speechless for a few moments before overcoming his surprise. All right, thanks for letting me know. With Ichigo. The spiky-haired teen gave a battle cry as he descended at the fragment with the intent to bisect it, only for it to quickly twist out of harm's way at the last moment. Ichigo gave an annoyed grumble. His current enemy was proving to be quite dexterous. The fragment was a deep, dark purple color and resembled a snake, except it was about 3 meters long, had a body as thick as an average man's and 2 tails, both of which ended in vicious cleaver-shaped blades similar to Zangetsu. 2 streaks of black started from its head, one on either side just behind its crimson-red eyes, then trailed off to roughly halfway down its serpentine body, just before the point where it split off into the 2 tails. Ichigo had been engaged in combat with this fragment for about 10 minutes by now. He'd managed to get a few good strikes in, evident by the multiple gashes across its form and the few chips in its tail blades, but it constantly evaded any killing blows. Its impressive flexibility and agility were starting to really get on the protector's nerves. Holding his Zanpakuto at the ready, Ichigo sized up the fragment as it did the same to him. Both entered a staring contest, brown boring into crimson and vice versa. Then, as though some kind of wordless signal had been given, both of them charged at the other, readying for an attack. Ichigo dipped under the arc of one of the fragment's blades, then blocked the second using the flat side of Zangetsu. Pouncing on the chance he saw before him, the teenage Soul Reaper quickly channeled the glowing blue energy of his Getsuga Tensho and released it at point-blank range. Even though the large snake had rapidly twisted away from the hazard, it couldn't avoid having one of its tails getting sliced off by the blade wave of energy. Dismissing his sword, Ichigo speedily equipped his shock burner and grabbed the fragment's gaping jaws with both hands when it attempted to lunge forth and bite him. Holding it away from him, he surged electricity through his right hand whilst summoning fire through his left. Keeping the oversized sake trapped within his iron grip, Ichigo blasted both elements straight into the fragment's open mouth without mercy. The monster was practically cooked through from the inside out, causing it to dissolve away into smoky black particles that quickly dispersed. Giving a sigh of relief, the substitute unequipped his sacred gear. He turned around to start heading off. Hopefully that would be the only incident he would be required to deal with. He had a free day today, he wanted to be able to kick back and relax. Next day, Kuo Academy gates. One Issei Hyudo was walking towards the school which he attended. Hopefully, with Kokabiel now dealt with thanks to Ichigo, they could all get back to a more relaxed life. However, his internal musings were cut short when he noticed a figure standing at the academy gates, one who he didn't recognize, but felt familiar to him all the same. A dull tingling manifested in his left arm. It was a teenage boy who looked to be around the same age as he himself was, with dark silver hair and fair skin. He was wearing normal clothing, but had a chain attached to his trousers that was dangling from his left side. "This is a nice school, isn't it?" commented the strange teen. "Yeah," Issei agreed cautiously. "It is." "Oh, that's right, you haven't actually seen me like this yet," said the stranger. "Issei Hyudo, I'm the White Dragon Emperor, Varley." Issei froze in shock, the tingling in his arm making sense now. Why was Varley here? Did he plan to fight him now? Was he even ready to take on an opponent of this caliber? "Tell me, Issei," Varley began. "Where do you think you rank within this world's list of strongest individuals?" "Who?" "You were originally a human, but recently became a devil, so that's made you a little stronger. Then, you also have your incomplete balance breaker to factor in." "What are you trying to get at?" Issei asked in confusion. "I'm saying that you have potential," Varley answered. "You could become strong if pushed in the right direction, so you're fairly valuable. That's why you should make sure to train him well." Ria's Gremory. Issei whipped his head around to see his redhead MSTR, who was accompanied by the rest of the ORC. Suddenly, Kiba and Zenovia were stood next to Varley and had their respective blades, the holy demonic sword and Durandal, near his neck. "What do you want, White Dragon Emperor?" Kiba demanded. "If you plan on having your fated battle here, I won't allow you to cause chaos," Zenovia stated. "Stop that," Varley simply stated with a smirk. "I can see how both of your hands are trembling. You're afraid. Besides, you people couldn't even effectively handle Kokabiel. What makes you think you could force me down?" After he said this, the two knights lowered their blades and stepped back with nervous expressions, knowing that he was right. Still, they made sure to keep a glare leveled on him, like how everyone else was doing. Albion's host simply smirked wider. "It would seem that your interesting ally has finally arrived," Varley remarked. "Ichigo Kurosoki." They all turned to see Ichigo and their fragment friends approaching them, the substitute Soul Reaper having his hands in his pockets. Within the blink of an eye, the orange-haired protector was stood right next to Varley with the blade of his Zanpakuto pressed against the latter's jugular. "What's your business here, White Dragon Emperor?" Ichigo asked coldly, his hand steady and unwavering. "Do you actually plan on attacking me?" Varley inquired in a somewhat intrigued tone. "If need be," Ichigo responded. "Just remember that I can easily lop your DMN head off, especially when I'm already this close and you don't have your armor on to get in my sword's way." Giving a small chuckle, Varley backed away from the group, raising his hands in surrender. "Don't worry, I'm not here to cause any trouble," he assured them. "I'm actually here on official Grigori business. In any case, it was nice meeting you all." Without any further ado, he walked off down the street, soon disappearing amongst the crowd that appeared after the barrier was lifted. After a few moments, when the tension had finally drained away, Rias turned to Ichigo. "We're going to be using the school's pool today after cleaning it out. Would you and the others like to join?" she offered. "Thanks for the proposal, but I think I'll pass," Ichigo told her. He faced Kuro and Nina. "What about you guys?" "No thanks, I don't really feel like it today," Nina declined. "Same here," Kuro seconded. "I appreciate the offer though." "I see," Ria said. "Oh well, if any of you do change your mind, then feel free to just come and join us, okay?" "We'll keep it in mind, Rias," Ichigo replied. Kuo Streets. School had finally come to a close for the day. Ichigo had his hands once more buried in his pockets as he walked down the street. The ORC were having their fun at the pool. Kuro and Nina had decided to head back home on their own, leaving the orange-haired teen to venture around the town by himself, not that he minded much. Sometimes, being on his own was more relaxing and peaceful. It was then Ichigo noticed that things were quiet. Too quiet. Looking around, he saw that he was the only person in sight. That couldn't be right, there was a small crowd of regular people. walking along just a few seconds ago. Suddenly, the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end as he sensed that he wasn't alone. Cautiously turning his head back, he suppressed a groan as he saw someone who he had hoped that he wouldn't have to deal with anytime soon. A young girl dressed in gothic Lolita clothing with black hair and grayish eyes, who he correctly assumed was Ophis. "Who are you?" the girl questioned as she walked up to him whilst he turned his body fully around to face her. "You know, it's only polite to introduce yourself first when asking someone else for their name," Ichigo replied in an attempt at some light humor. The dragon gazed as a girl looked at him blankly for a moment. "I am Ophis, the Dragon of Infinity. Ichigo Kurosaki," he answered in kind. "So, is there any reason why you're here talking to me, Ophis?" "What are you?" Ophis asked bluntly. "I know you are not from this world. You only recently arrived here along with 200 other, smaller, beings. Also, you look like a human, but your power is beyond any humans." "Well, looks like the cat's out the bag," the teenage Soul Reaper sighed. "I am human, just not entirely. I'm something that's known as a Soul Reaper, well, a substitute Soul Reaper to be more precise. Before you ask what I'm doing here, I want to live a peaceful life which I can enjoy and protect those close to me, nothing more, nothing less." Ophis regarded the protector silently for a few seconds, her grey orb seeming to scan him. "Help me destroy Great Red," she said simply, breaking the silence and causing Ichigo to blink in confusion at the unexpected statement. "Sorry, but Great Red happens to be an acquaintance of mine," he told her. "I'm going to need an explanation of why you want me to help you kill him. That dumb dragon invaded my home, the dimensional gap, and has ruined the silence that I once lived in," Ophis answered with a blank expression, as though it was obvious. "I want to destroy him so that I can reclaim my home and silence." "Are you serious?" Ichigo deadpanned. "You want to kill Great Red, just because he's making noise in an unimaginably large dimensional space?" "Yes." "Seriously, have you ever considered just going to another part of the dimensional gap, where he isn't there? Or have you even tried talking to him to let him know that he's disturbing you?" Ophis remained silent. It seemed as though she hadn't considered or done any of those two things. "I want my home back," she said monotonously a few seconds after, making Ichigo picture a naive and slightly stubborn child for some reason. "Help me beat Great Red." The spiky-haired teen let out an exasperated sigh. "Look, I'm sorry to tell you, but my answer is no. I'm not going to fight Great Red for such a petty reason. Besides, I'm not even strong enough to do that." "Please?" Ophis asked, further reinforcing the naive child image that Ichigo had in his mind. "Still no," he told her sternly. "You may be the Dragon of Infinity, but you have to realize that you can't just do what you want all the time, and you can't just expect people to do anything you want either." The dragon looked at him with a curious expression. "I'll be watching you, Ichigo Kurosaki." Then, without as much as another word, Ophis vanished and the crowd of common people returned. "That's just great," Ichigo complained to nobody in particular. "Omake, déjà vu, copyright protection." Kokabiel crashed into the ground courtesy of another strong punch from Ichigo. Gritting his teeth in frustration, the fallen angel charged up an orb of densely concentrated light energy at his fingertips. In response, the orange-haired teen began generating a mostly red ball of electricity with bits of black fire swirling in it. The two combatants shot their respective blasts, with Ichigo's overcoming Kokabiel's before they cancelled out. His eyes widening in disbelief, the Kadra fallen angel took to the skies in order to get some room. Suddenly, his vision started to shift to a side. He realized it was because Ichigo had grabbed his head from the side and was turning it away, then proceeded to brutally smash his face into the ground. The spiky-haired Soul Reaper flash-stepped away as his opponent began pulling himself out of the floor. Immediately, Kokabiel began to charge up another ball of light at his fingertips. Ichigo responded in the same way as he had previously. Once again both attacks collided with each other, and just like last time the substitutes overpowered the fallen angels before both cancelled out. Growling in anger and practically bristling with rage, Kokabiel formed an especially deadly explosive light spear in his hands. He was planning on throwing it at the teenage nuisance and was preparing to do so, but Ichigo suddenly appeared right in front of him and blocked the light spear using the palm of his left hand that was covered in the gauntlet of his Inferno Bolt. What? With just nothing but his hand? Kokabiel thought in shock. The orange-haired Soul Reaper then crushed the light-based weapon by simply clenching his hand into a fist, kicking up a small dust cloud. When the visual obstacle cleared, Kokabiel saw Ichigo giving him a deadly glare. In the next instant, the Teen Protector slashed his Baknai Zanpakuto across his enemy's torso. Kokabiel staggered backwards, bleeding from the wound inflicted upon him. However, before he could do anything, a surge of black energy with a green outline crashed into him, leaving only his blackened corpse when it dissipated away. Recognizing the technique with a start, Ichigo quickly looked up. His suspicions were confirmed when he saw none other than the former 4th Espada of Aizen's army, Ulquiorra. The Arrancar was in his true, second release state, looking like a menacing demon floating in the sky with the moon behind him. "Don't try to steal the way my battle unfolded, trash," the pale Arrancar stated in his standard monotone, seemingly addressing Kokabiel's remains. "The events of that battle are nothing less than my copyright, you have no right to take it for yourself." "Ulquiorra, what are you doing here?" Ichigo demanded. "How the hell are you even alive?" "I am simply defending what is mine," Ulquiorra replied. He raised a hand and opened up a garganta. "That trash was attempting to take it from me." Without another word, the hollow disappeared as the tear in space closed up, leaving a confused Soul Reaper and his friends. "What the hell just happened?" Ichigo quietly asked. "Oh make." Ichigo was facing Ophis, who was trying to get him to help her defeat Great Red. "Look, I already told you, my answer is no," the Soul Reaper snapped at the dragon. "But I won't come across any other potential allies like you," Ophis responded. "Still no." Before he could protest, the Infinity Dragon guised as a girl grabbed his arm and did something that made his vision swim with a fuzzy blend of colors. When Ichigo's sight cleared up again, he realized that he was in the iridescent amalgamation of colors known as the dimensional gap. A second later, he heard something that sounded akin to a loud cheer or whoop of joy, followed by Great Red appearing right in front of him. Ichigo, the giant dragon, asked in confusion. "I wasn't expecting to see you here." "Oh, hey Great Red," Ichigo greeted. "Yeah, I was kind of dragged here by little Miss Ophis right here." He placed his right hand atop her head for emphasis. She was watching the two exchange words in slight surprise, having not expected them to actually know each other personally. "Really? Why?" Great Red inquired. "She's trying to get me to help her kill you," the spiky-haired answered. "She wants to kill me? Why's that?" "Something about you barging into her home and taking away the silence that she loves so much." "Well, she should have just come and told me so," Great Red stated, causing Ophis to look at him with wide eyes. "I would have been more quiet and moved over to another part of the dimensional gap." Ichigo all but rounded on Ophis. "See? I told you that you should have just talked to him," he reprimanded. "You never even considered doing that, and when I mentioned it you just brushed it off. What do you have to say for yourself, young lady?" Ophis lowered her head in shame. "Sorry. Sorry for not listening and for causing you trouble." "You know," Great Red interrupted. "Seeing this makes you two look like an older brother and younger sister, especially with the brotherly telling off you just gave her." Ichigo looked at the red dragon in shock, having not realized that he'd gone into Big Brother mode. "ODMN. I did that instinctively, probably because she looks a similar age to my younger sisters." Ophis on the other hand immediately grabbed the teen's hand. Big Brother. Chapter 23. Storm Before Calm. Ichigo's room. A certain substitute Soul Reaper lay down on his bed, pondering over the encounter he'd had not too long ago with Ophis. What really bugged him was how she said she'd be watching him. It hinted that she'd repeatedly approach him with the same demand of helping her defeat Great Red. Releasing a tired sigh, he turned over and closed his eyes, waiting for sleep to claim him. Next day, Kuo Academy. Ichigo walked down the hallway towards his classroom. As usual, a hushed murmur of whispers always came from the surrounding students whenever he passed them. He entered the classroom and made his way over to his seat, giving Akino a small wave in greeting when he passed her. Sitting down, he waited for the rest of the students to diffuse in and for the teacher to come. He vaguely remembered something about it being some sort of open day for parents to come and see their children in class, but he didn't have to worry about anything like that. School roof. Ichigo, Kuro, Nina, and Koneko sat down against the railings as they unwrapped and opened their bentos. Both Ichigo and Nina had made the lunches to give a bit more variety, not that anyone really minded if one of them had made all of it. Man, I gotta say, I feel really sorry for all those students who had embarrassing moments because of their parents, Kuro stated. Some of them were almost permanently bowing their red faces out of embarrassment. I guess I can empathize with them, Ichigo remarked, suppressing a shudder as he imagined what his father would have done if he were here. By the way, I overheard some sort of commotion regarding Issei. Anyone care to elaborate? It was in our last class, Nina told him. Even though it was an English lesson, the teacher gave us all a block of PVC clay and told us to be artistic and sculpt something. Something about art also being a popular form of expressing one's thoughts and feelings. I can see the logic, Koneko commented. But I think it's out of context. Yeah, Kuro agreed. Anyway, somehow Issei managed to sculpt a perfect replica of Ria's on what looked like a trophy stand or something. He gave a brief chuckle. You should have seen how crazy all the others went for it. They were seriously willing to pay him quite a bit for it, but he declined and said that he was going to give it to Ria's as a gift. Apparently Surzex is here for the open day. Have you seen him yet? Asked Nina. Yeah, he was standing at the back with the others in the class that I had with Ria's, Ichigo answered. There was another guy with him too, probably their father since he looked like an older Surzex. Oh yeah, hopefully an official peace treaty will be signed soon between the three factions. Wow, that's some pretty good news, said Kuro. The group nodded in agreement and continued eating their respective lunches. A gentle breeze blew through the air, giving a sense of tranquility. While unlikely, hopefully it would last. It seemed as though there was some sort of commotion taking place down at the gym, but the group paid it no heed. Ichigo's classroom. Ichigo's eyebrow twitched as he stared at the block of PVC clay on his desk. You've got to be kidding me, he thought in disbelief. Fair enough, he last did this with Issei's class and he made a masterpiece, but does that really mean he has to do it for all the classes he's going to teach today? Go on, express yourself through your sculpting, the teacher cheered. Hyudo in the second year managed to make a real masterpiece. Create your own ones, sculpt freely. Unleash your imagination. Ichigo looked at the block of clay intently. Just what the hell am I supposed to make? I don't have any idea. Hey, King, his inner hollow suddenly called. Close your eyes and let me take control of your hands. Wait, do you plan on sculpting something? The orange-haired teen mentally questioned in surprise. Yeah, his pale copy admitted. Come on, it'll be a good one, trust me. Just let me control your hands for a few moments, nothing else. Well, I've got nothing to lose really, Ichigo thought. He closed his eyes. All right, make your best. A few minutes passed with Ichigo feeling his hands moving, molding and detailing, but without him actually doing anything. Surprisingly, his inner hollow seemed to be making something very finely detailed, if all the small and precise movements were any indication. He wondered what it looked like to everyone else, him sitting there with his eyes closed whilst his hands darted over the clay. Of course, that was assuming they weren't absorbed within their own sculpt. Kurosaki, that's amazing, the teacher suddenly declared, causing the spiky-haired protector's eyes to snap open. Such skill, such detail. What a coincidence, stated his hollow, relinquishing his control over Ichigo's hands. I just finished. Behold, King, feast your eyes on my expert sculpting skills. Looking down at the object in his hands, Ichigo's eyes widened in shocked recognition. Standing on a square base was a model of him in his Uvasto Lord full hollow form, the arms slightly spread out with Tensor Zangetsu gripped in the right hand and the mask's mouth open in a roar. It was very accurately detailed too. All the muscles were correctly proportioned and the mask's markings had been precisely engraved. The tattered Bankai clothing had been replicated perfectly around the body. He had to admit, this was very impressive. Before he knew it, the substitute Soul Reaper was surrounded by the rest of the class, all of them staring at the sculpture in awe. Most of the girls kept repeatedly looking between him and his sculpture whilst sporting red blushes. The teacher was rambling on about how he discovered 2 true artists within one day. A good dozen of Ichigo's classmates began asking him if the model was up for sale. Deciding to keep it for himself though, the orange-haired teen politely declined their offers and told them that he wasn't intending on selling it. Most of them went back to their places to continue working on their own blocks of clay, whilst a few of the parents at the back seemed to be trying to get a photo of his sculpture. Ichigo released a low sigh. At least school was almost over for the day. Plus it was Friday, so they'd be free for the weekend. Kuo Academy gates. Ichigo walked through the grounds towards the school gates, Kuro and Nina accompanying him. Up ahead, he caught sight of the Gremory peerage as well as Surzex, his and Ria's father and Grafia. Surzex was wearing a smart tuxedo as opposed to his ornamental armor and cloak. Ria seemed to be extremely flustered about something, if her red face and pouty expression were anything to go by. On the other hand, Surzex and Lord Gremory looked rather pleased. Grafia looked as stoic as ever. "Oh, hello there Ichigo-kun," Surzex greeted cheerfully with a smile and wave upon seeing him. "To be honest, I was hoping to meet you earlier when I was in the school gym." Seafall seemed quite disappointed too at missing the chance to meet you. "Sorry about that," the Soul Reaper apologized. "I was having lunch on the roof at the time and didn't want to get caught up in the commotion at the gym." "Well, I suppose it just can't be helped," Surzex commented. "Don't worry though, it's all okay. Besides, at least we've met now rather than later or even not at all." Lord Gremory walked up to Ichigo and offered his hand. "It's good to meet you at last Ichigo Kurosaki." "Likewise," responded the spiky-haired teen, shaking the man's hand. "I would like to personally thank you for supporting my daughter and her peerage in these recent events." "It was nothing, really. I just do what I can to look out for my friends." There was some miscellaneous small talk between the group for the next few minutes, which culminated in Surzex letting slip that he needed to find a place to stay for the night, leading Issei to offer spending the night at his house, which the Crimson Satan accepted happily. Rias looked a rather potent mix of horrified and embarrassed at that news. "Well then, see you tomorrow Ichigo-kun," said Surzex cheerfully as he walked off with Grafia beside him, waving in farewell. Issei and Rias tailed after them, the former having a slightly bewildered look whilst the latter looked depressed as though the world had ended. "Sure. Have a nice stay in Kuo," the teenage Soul Reaper replied with a small wave of his own. He turned around to face his own group of the 2 human-looking fragments plus Koneko. "Come on guys, let's go home ourselves." With that, everyone else also began moving off towards their respective places of residence. Ichigo's house, underground training room, next day. The orange-haired substitute Flash stepped out of the way to avoid the lunge that Zangetsu had made at him. Whilst in mid-air, he quickly spun around to parry the strike from his inner hollow. Seeing both opponents rushing towards him, Ichigo unleashed a quick, nameless Getsuga Tensho before Flash stepping to the ground and firing a lightning bolt from each hand towards each of his sparring partners. Zangetsu opted to evade the electric attack and Flash stepped out of the way before floating down to the ground. Conversely, his pale replica decided to meet the blue lightning head-on, charging towards it while encompassing his Zanpakuto in black Getsuga energy then cleaving through the bolt. Once he was done, he too descended to the floor. "Heh, not bad king," the bleached being complimented. "You're getting better with that sacred gear of yours. Still, is that all you can do?" "I must agree with him Ichigo," the Zanpakuto spirit stated. "Your shock burner gives you free manipulation of your fire and lightning. Simply making projectile blasts and makeshift weapons aren't using its full capabilities. The teen smirked at their words. I know, he answered calmly. Which is why I came up with this. Dismissing his Zanpakuto and surrounding his right fist in wreathing crimson flames, Ichigo punched the ground. Homura! Inferno, he immediately cried upon making contact. An intense barrage of powerful flaming explosions detonated all around him in roughly a 10-meter radius, turning the area into a hellish sea of fire for a few seconds after the explosions. Ha 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 ha, his inner hollow bellowed maniacally as he shot up into the air. The left sleeve of his attire was burnt away and destroyed, while he had slight scalds and burns across his exposed skin, as well as the majority of his clothing being damaged to varying degrees. Old Man Zangetsu, on the other hand, maintained a calm disposition as he shot out of the fires almost immediately, even though his clothing and some of his hair had been singed a little. Impressive, Ichigo, the Zanpakuto spirit complimented. It is a good move that can be used both offensively and defensively, giving it much tactical value. I suppose that's enough training for today, his hollow stated, sheathing his reversed Zangetsu. Tell me though, have you come up with any other tricks? Yeah, the substitute Soul Reaper admitted. He dismissed his sacred gear and shifted garb back to his casual clothes. It's on the same principle as what I just did, but instead I discharge a hell load of lighting and electricity bursts around me. I decided to call it Ryu, Lightning Storm. Not bad, his hollow praised with his signature smirk. Just make sure you keep progressing forward and trying new things though. Yeah, I'll keep it in mind, Ichigo replied as the two beings faded from the physical plane. Releasing a grateful sigh, he shifted attire back to his casual clothes and turned around before heading towards the exit. He'd take a nice, relaxing shower, then have some breakfast. Since it was Saturday, he didn't have to worry about school. Kitchen. Ichigo, Koneko, Kuro and Nina were finishing off the last of their breakfast. Nina had cooked today whilst the Soul Reaper was taking his shower and everyone else was waking up. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. I'll get it, Ichigo stated as he stood up from his chair and walked out the room. Upon opening the door, he saw a cheery red-haired man accompanied by an ever-stoic maid with silver hair. Good morning, Ichigo-kun, Sir Zex greeted. Is everything okay at your house? Morning, Sir Zex. Yeah, everything's good, the teen answered. Do the two of you want to come inside? Thanks for the offer, but I'll have to decline, Sir Zex told him with an apologetic smile. I have some official business to take care of today. However, I was wondering if I could ask you for a favor. Well, that depends on what it is, the spiky-haired protector replied neutrally. Fair enough. I told Rias last night to unseal her other bishop. She wasn't strong enough to handle his power before, but she is now after all these recent events. He hastily continued when he saw Ichigo's raised eyebrow. Don't worry, he's not really dangerous, it's just that he has a very strong sacred gear that can be a bit troublesome since he can't fully control it. I'm sure that Issei-kun and the others will try to help him, but I was wondering if you could too. Oh, even if you don't want to go, could you tell Koneko-chan to go? Rias called for her. Before Ichigo could give his response, Grafia spoke up. Sir Zex-sama, you're beginning to get late for your appointments today. Oh dear. Sorry about this, Ichigo-kun, but it seems I must take my leave now. He turned around and waved at the substitute, Grafia following after him. Take care. Ichigo closed the door and walked back to the others. Who was it? Kuro inquired. Sir Zex, Ichigo responded. He then proceeded to tell them about the favor he had been asked to do and asked if they wanted to tag along. Sure, sounds like fun, Kuro agreed. Well, we're pretty much free today, so why not? Nina said. Bucho asked for me so I'll come as well, Koneko stated. Shadow hopped into Kuro's arms, indicating that it also wanted to join them. All right then, let's go, Ichigo declared. Kuo Academy, old school building. The group arrived to see a rather strange sight. Zenobia had Durandal held in her grasp as she chased around a small blonde figure who was crying profusely whilst running for dear life. On the side stood Issei with a depressed aura about him and Aisha trying to console him. Soji was also with them, having a depressed aura like Issei did. So, I'm guessing the one running away from Zenovia is the other bishop that Surzex mentioned, right? Ichigo inquired. Although, why is he wearing the girl's uniform? That's Gasper. Koneko told him. He's a first year like me and Bucho's other bishop. A half-human half-vampire with a sacred gear. He's also a shut-in and a cross-dresser. That's pretty unexpected, I guess, remarked Kuro whilst Shadow tilted its head in confusion. He stepped forward and called out to the blue-haired knight. Hey, Zenovia! Give the poor guy a break and stop chasing him. Zenovia did stop and looked to where the voice had come from. Issei and Aisha also turned to see them. Gasper on the other hand collapsed near the base of the tree, crying in relief that his torment was over. Oh, hey guys, Issei greeted as they approached him. What brings you here? Also, how could you tell that Gasper is a boy? We were sort of told about it by Koneko just now, Nina answered. The snow-haired rook walked up to the dampier with a clove of garlic suddenly in her hand. Here, Jayakuen, eat this, she said, holding the clove out to him. It's good for your health and stamina. Ah. No. Gasper screamed in terror. The poor blonde took off once again with his fellow first-year power walking after him, holding the garlic out to him all the while. Wara! Koneko-chan is bullying me, he cried as he ran. Come on, Jayakuen. Koneko said blankly as she pursued him. Eat the garlic. Ichigo was watching the spectacle before him in disbelief. Is Koneko smirking? Wow, who would have thought, Kuro agreed in equal fascination. Giving a sigh, Nina walked up to the comedic pair and gently placed her hand on Koneko's shoulder, making the petite rook stop and face her. Come on now, Koneko, I think that's enough, the fragment girl chastised softly. HM. The smaller girl hummed whilst nodding in acceptance. Gasper fell to the ground and hugged Nina's ankles with a stream of tears flowing from his eyes. Thank you *sniff* for saving me *sniff* one-san. Oh, what's this? Looks like you kids are having quite a bit of fun, commented a new voice. Turning their heads in the direction the sound had come from, the assembled teens saw a man with black hair and gold bangs who was clothed in a casual yet expensive-looking maroon kimono. Azazel! Issei exclaimed as he summoned his boosted gear and took a basic stance. Oi, Hyudo, Soji called a bit nervously, equipping his absorption line. By Azazel, you don't mean? Yeah, the Red Dragon Emperor confirmed, never taking his eyes off the Grigori leader. This guy is the real deal, the head of the fallen angels. Zenovia and Koneko also became serious at his revelation, getting ready for a battle. Gasper yelped and hid behind Nina's legs. The only ones who weren't tensed up were Ichigo and the fragments, as well as Azazel himself. The man simply sighed at the commotion. Geez, and all I wanted was a peaceful stroll, he complained. Hey you old crow, Ichigo greeted casually, his hands in his pockets and a smirk on his features. Mind telling us the real reason you decided to drop by? Man, you're no fun at all, Azazel huffed. I came here wondering if I could meet the holy demonic sword user. Well, Kiba's not here. Issei answered in a slightly hostile tone. No? Or well, guess I'll have to meet him some other time, Azazel replied, ignoring the hostility. You can calm down, Issei, Ichigo assured the pawn. The rest of you guys too. He's not here to start anything. He gave me the go-ahead to put down Kokabiel. Remember, the Gremory members and Soji looked at him uncertainly for a moment before easing up. Azazel took a moment to appraise them with his eyes. So, a half-vampire with forbidden Bela view and a kid with absorption line. Hey, the fallen angel remarked curiously. Did you know that absorption line can drain and scatter the target's power? It contains part of Vritra's soul, one of the 5 dragon kings. Soji stared at his sacred gear in awe at the new information. Use it on the half-vampire kid to drain away his excess power. It should make training easier and let him control his sacred gear better. Forbidden Bela view, the ability to stop time within the user's line of sight. If you can't gain control of that power, then you'll end up becoming a burden to you comrades. Of course, if you ingest the BLD of the Red Dragon Emperor Kid, you'll boost your capabilities exponentially. Well, you kids are free to do whatever you feel like. He turned around and started walking away from the group. I'll see you all again some other time, probably at the proposed peace meeting between the three factions. Take care until then. He gave a wave before moving out of sight. Well, I guess it wouldn't hurt to try following his advice, Soji finally announced as he turned to address Issei. You sure, Soji? The brown-haired teen asked with slight worry. Don't you have some work to do for your MSTR? I can do it later, the Citri pawn assured. Besides, I want to train with my sacred gear after hearing all that. Later, outside Gasper's room. Some progress had been made with the timid bishop, but not much. Sure, with Soji's absorption line attached to him, his forbidden Bela view went out of control less often, but the biggest problem was Gapsa's phobia of pretty much everything coupled with his low self-esteem. Although it seemed that he had become quite fond of Nina after she saved him from Koneko, as he would always try hiding behind her to get away from everyone else. Also, he seemed to have become accustomed to Shadow despite being initially afraid of the small fragment. Twice during the time when Gapsa was being trained by Issei and Ichigo, and the fragments had to go off to deal with a hostile fragment that appeared. At some point, Soji took his leave as he had to get back to his assigned duties. Unfortunately, it only became harder to handle Gasper from then. When Ichigo and his housemates returned, the small boy had run off to his room and hid there, refusing to come out. Soon after, Rias and the rest of the ORC returned. The Gremory heiress was a little upset at Gasper's lack of progress, but sighed and said that it couldn't really be helped. Currently, Ichigo, Issei and Rias were stood outside Gasper's room. The half-vampire could be heard sobbing from inside his room. Gasper, come outside, Rias coaxed. I'm not mad at you, I promise. No. Gasper wailed in denial. I don't want to come outside. There are too many scary people outside, and I'm nothing but trouble for everyone else with this power. I'm sorry about this, Bucho, Issei apologized. I guess we were too rough on him before. It's not your fault, Issei, Rias assured him. I'd like to know something, Ichigo stated. Just why is he so timid and afraid of everybody else? Rias then told the two teens about Gasper's past and how he was discriminated against by both vampires and humans since he wasn't fully either. His lack of control over Forbidden Bela view also made matters worse for him. He essentially became a complete shut-in and remained so even after joining Ria's peerage. It didn't help that she didn't have the power to properly handle High back then either, leading him to be sealed in the room that he was now hiding in. Ichigo's scowl deepened as he heard the tale, getting more and more disgusted by the people who had given his blonde junior such a strong life. His own family shunned him for crying out loud. Bucho, leave this to me, Issei declared. I'll do my absolute best to get through to Gasper and break him out of his shell. It's the least I can do as his senpai. The brown-haired pawn had a burning determination in his eyes. Ria smiled at High gently. Very well. I'll let you take care of this, Issei. If you don't mind, I'd like to speak with Gasper myself, Ichigo requested. He could relate somewhat to the Dampier, with the fiasco involving his hollow powers and all. He also sensed a power of a darker nature than his sacred gear within the young boy, though it was well suppressed. Feel free, Rias consented. I'd appreciate any help for Gasper. She then began walking away from the male pair, leaving the old school building. Issei turned back to the door and took a deep breath. He waited for another moment or two before calling out. Gasper, I'm not going to move at all from this spot unless you come out and talk, the brown-haired teen declared. He turned around again to lean against the door and sat down. I'll wait here all night if I have to. You're my kohai and I'm not giving up on you. You can count me in on that too, Ichigo stated. I have a few things I want to talk with you about and help you with. The two of them heard some shuffling sounds from inside the room. It seemed as though Gasper was approaching the door from the other side. The older males held their silence, wondering if Gasper was going to say anything. Finally, a timid voice, partially muffled by the wooden door, came through. "Why are you trying so strong to get me out of this room?" he asked quietly. "All I do is cause trouble for everyone with this power. It's better if I just stay in here, that way nobody will be bothered by me." "Are you afraid of your power, Gasper?" Ichigo inquired. "Are you afraid that you'll end up hurting somebody with it? Or that you'll only get in everybody else's way?" Silence met his question, but that was all the confirmation that the orange-haired protector needed. "I was once in a similar situation, you know. I have a certain power that was running rampant at the time, putting me and my friends in danger. It only got worse as time went on too. The only way out was if I learned to control it and rein it in. It wasn't easy, and I was actually at risk of dying if I didn't succeed, but I pulled through because it was important and something that I had to do, not just for my sake but for my friend's sake too." The teenage Soul Reaper stopped for a few seconds to let what he just said sink in. "While your situation with Forbidden Bela View may be troublesome, I don't think it goes into the life-threatening category, Gasper. You can overcome your control issues, you just need to push yourself and strengthen your resolve. Think of why you want to overcome it, which I'm pretty sure is so that you don't inconvenience your friends, and have a little more faith in yourself." A sniff was heard from behind the large door, which opened a fraction to reveal the young boy's face. His expression was still somewhat downcast, but he was no longer crying. "I don't think I can be that strong or brave," he replied sadly. "I'm just a weak and timid excuse of a half-vampire." "That's not true," Issei denied vehemently. "Timid and practically panphobic, yes, but I remember Bucho telling me that you took up a mutation piece. That alone proves you're strong and have potential." Gasper was regarding the resident pervert with a surprised look. Issei brought up his left forearm in front of him and gazed at it with a somewhat melancholy face. "This arm of mine, it holds the power of the Red Dragon Emperor, the boosted gear. Sometimes when I think about it I get quite scared. I had to fight against Riser so that Bucho could keep her freedom. We all received good training from Ichigo here for that match, but it was still strong. I even sacrificed my left arm to gain the power I needed to beat that overstuffed turkey." "You really gave up your arm to the dragon?" Gasper asked in disbelief. "Why? Why would you go so far?" The blonde bishop opened the door a little more and sat down next to the brown-haired pawn. "It's because Bucho is someone precious to me," Issei responded with a smile. "Like Ichigo taught me during our training, it's a man's duty to protect what's precious to him. Also, you have to believe in yourself that you are capable of overcoming the obstacles in your way. I wanted to protect Bucho's happiness no matter what, so giving up my arm to the Welsh dragon was an easy decision for me." Gasper was looking at his senior in awe. He then gave both Issei and Ichigo a small smile. "You're really brave to do something like that, Issei-senpai," he commented. "And you seem like a really amazing and wise person, Ichigo-senpai." Ichigo gave him a rare small smile of his own as he took a seat on Gasper's free side. "Thanks for the praise, Gasper, but I'm not all that great or wise. The advice I gave to Issei was based something I was once told by one of my teachers during my early training. Also, like I mentioned to Issei during that training PRD, I wasn't always strong. I had to work strong to gain this power I have now. Do you really think that I can become strong and get control over my sacred gear?" the Dhampir asked. "Sure I do," Ichigo replied encouragingly. "Like Issei mentioned earlier, you took up a mutation piece. That alone speaks volumes of your potential. Plus, you've been talking to us all this time and your sacred gear hasn't triggered once." Gasper's eyes widened when he realized that fact. "All right," Issei cheered. "See? You're already making progress. So, do you want to give another shot at training your sacred gear with me? We don't have Soji's absorption line with us, but hey, we'll make do with what we can." "Yes," Gasper declared, sending the Red Dragon Emperor a determined look. "I want to become strong and brave, and have control over my Forbidden Bela View." Ichigo stood up and turned away from the pair of devils. He tucked his hands into his pockets before addressing them. Well, I'll leave this in your hands, Issei. Gapsa, if you want help with anything, you can feel free to ask me when you see me. With that, the teenage substitute began walking away from them. Kuo Academy gates. Ichigo was approaching the academy's threshold when a magic circle suddenly appeared, followed soon after by the materialization of Surzex and Kiba. Thank you for your time, Yuto-kun, said the elder Gremory. He then caught sight of a certain spiky-haired war hero. Ah, what a coincidence. Sorry to trouble you, Ichigo-kun, but could spare a few minutes. There's something I wish to speak with you about. Sure, I'm not really busy right now anyway, Ichigo agreed. I'll be taking my leave now, announced Kiba. Is anybody still in the old school building, Ichigo? Yeah. Issei and Gasper are still in there, Ichigo informed him. He's opened up a little to Issei and they were talking together when I left. Them. Giving a nod of appreciation, the blonde knight walked away in the direction of the old school building. Ichigo returned his attention to Surzex. So, what is it that you wanted to talk about? Well, it's just that the peace meeting between the three factions will be taking place here tomorrow evening. You've been requested to also attend along with your friends due to being part of the recent battle against Kokabil. I wanted to ask if you'd agree to show up. You can decline if you wish, seeing as you aren't technically affiliated with any of the factions. No, I'll attend, Ichigo told him. I don't really have any plans for tomorrow night anyway. Besides, I'd like to see peace between the three factions be officially declared, and if I can help push for that then I'll do so, even if I'm not usually one for official meetings and such. Excellent, said Surzex with a pleased smile. I'll see you there then. A red magic circle with a Gremory crest glowed under his feet before he vanished, leaving the teen warrior alone. His face impassive, Ichigo resumed walking out of the grounds and towards his house. The park. Ichigo was in the middle of the park when he noticed an odd presence around him. No, it was multiple presences, none of which he recognized. The orange-haired Soul Reaper noticed a strange mist around the area that obscured the trees from his view. His instincts kicked in and he immediately prepared for a confrontation. He hadn't shifted to his Soul Reaper attire yet, but his muscles were tensed and ready to spring into action whilst also being ready to summon his Zanpakuto in a flash. A figure began approaching him through the fog. It was a young male, probably a teenager, with dark hair. He was wearing what looked like a school uniform but with armor on several places. In his hands was a unique-looking spear that had a very powerful holy aura. A further two figures stepped forward from his sides. One was a muscular young man, while the other was a blonde teenage girl. They all seemed to be around Ichigo's age or slightly younger. Greetings, Ichigo Kurosaki, said the central teen. My name is Cao Cao, a descendant of the original hero Cao Cao. The newly introduced Cao Cao gestured to his two companions. This is Hercules, a descendant of the original, and this is Jean, a descendant of Joan d'Arc. That's nice and all, but who the hell are you and how do you know my name? Ichigo replied, not letting his guard down. Also, what do you want? Cao Cao smiled. You're quite observant as well as blunt. We saw you fighting during the recent battle against Kokabil. It was honestly quite amazing, watching a human overpower a Cadre-class fallen angel. I'd like to extend my invitation to you to join the hero faction. Hero faction? Ichigo inquired. Can't say that I've ever heard of you guys before. You probably wouldn't have. We're a group in an organization called the Chaos Brigade, led by the Infinity Dragon Ophis, Cao Cao explained. We consist of human sacred gear users and descendants of legendary heroes. You want me to join Ophis? The teenage Soul Reaper asked. Oh, don't worry, Ophis is just a figurehead. You don't really have to follow her, Cao Cao assured, misplacing Ichigo's questioning tone. We just told her that we'll help her kill Great Red and she lets us do whatever we want. There are other factions too within the Chaos Brigade, but we're the only one which aims to take humanity above the supernatural races that oppress us. Ichigo kept a straight face throughout everything. Although, what he'd just been told only served to reinforce the image he had of Ophis being a naive little girl, as well as tick him off in regards to how these jerks seemed to be just using her. "You're wasting your time," Ichigo declared. "I have no intention of joining you or any other faction of this Chaos Brigade. You're basically just a bunch of terrorists using Ophis' name, and I refuse to be a part of something like that." "I see. It seems I was mistaken about you," said Cao Cao in a somber tone. "I thought that you'd see this is for the good of humanity. It looks like we'll have to use force now." Ichigo's clothing shifted to his Soul Reaper uniform and he swung Zangetsu off his back, while at the same time equipping his shock burner. He said only 2 words to the group. "Bring it." The one called Hercules charged at him first. Ichigo sidestepped out of the way and harshly swung the broadside of his Zanpakuto into him, batting him away. Cao Cao rushed in next with a few jabs and slashes, all of which the orange-haired protector blocked or evaded. He parried the offending spear and kicked his opponent away. "So, the big guy Hercules is a power type and this Cao Cao is a technique type," Ichigo observed. "I'm guessing that the girl is probably a speed type or all-rounder." He then heard Hercules say the words balance break, setting him on alert. Taking no chances, Ichigo charged up an extremely dense quantity of lightning around his right fist and swiftly punched it into the ground. "Ryu!" he shouted out just as numerous explosions of blue lightning surged out and detonated all around him. "Oh, make the price of power. Please, train me again." Issei pleaded to Ichigo with his head bowed. "Issei? What's this about?" Ichigo inquired in bewilderment. The Red Dragon Emperor raised his head and looked at him with a slightly sad expression. "In that battle against Kokabiel, I could barely do anything against the guy. I need to get stronger so that I can protect Bucho and everyone else." "That's great, Issei, but I think you should sort out your own training regime," Ichigo told him. "Please," the brown-haired teen begged. "When you trained us for that rating game against Riser, Drake told me that I'd become way stronger than I normally would have on my own. I need your help." Ichigo let out an exasperated sigh. However, a predatory grin soon manifested on his face. "I'll train you on one condition," Issei. "You have to drop all that perverted CRP for the duration I train you, otherwise I'll call it off." Issei felt as though he'd been suddenly struck by a lightning bolt and staked through the heart. He looked at the senior war hero with wide, disbelieving eyes. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. "Only if you agree to cook for me at least once a day while you're training me," he declared. "If I'm going to have to give up on my preferred activities for a while, I want something to make it worthwhile," he thought. "I've got no problems with that," Ichigo agreed. "All right, tomorrow's Saturday, so come round to my place at about 2 in the afternoon." "All right, I'll be there." Issei's classroom. The Gremory pawn sat somewhat miserably in his chair, knowing that he'd have to give up all his escapades with Matsuda and Motohama for a while. The bell rang, signifying the end of the school day. His 2 fellow perverts approached him happily. "Hey, Issei," greeted Matsuda cheerfully. "Do you want to join us in peeping on the Kendo Club?" asked Motohama, causing many glares to be sent their way. Issei gulped nervously. "I'm sorry guys, but I can't. I can't go peeping, or do any other kind of perverted stuff with you, not for a while at least." The entire class fell into a shocked silence so heavy that it was practically suffocating. "Ah! Who are you and what have you done to our friend Issei?" M&M shouted dramatically as they grabbed his collar and shook him. "Oi! Knock it off," he yelled back whilst he smacked their hands away. He gave them a serious look with a few small tears of sadness and frustration present in his eyes. "You don't understand. I made a promise that I'd lay off that stuff for a while. I've got too much at stake here." Everyone was stunned into silence once more at the infamous teen's words. Could this really be the openly perverted boy they all knew? "Did I just hear that right?" whispered one of the girls. "Did he really just say that he's going to stop being a pervert?" "I think he did," her friend whispered back. "I want to say that this is just some trick or lie, but he looks and sounds really serious about it." Maybe he's actually a decent person after all, remarked a third girl. I don't think anyone would really hate him if he actually stops being such a pervert. If only the other two idiots could be as smart. Issei heard all of the whispered comments and murmurs due to his enhanced hearing. A small smile formed on his face. Maybe this won't be so bad after all, he thought. Omake 2. Office Big Brother, Part 2. Ichigo was taking a peaceful stroll through the park when he suddenly felt himself pass through some sort of barrier. Not again, the teen groaned whilst face-palming. What is it this time? Removing his hand from his face, he caught sight of Office standing before him. Behind her were three people chained up on chairs with cloth tied around their mouths. They were Cao, Hercules, and Jean. They looked terrified out of their wits and seemed to be begging the Soul Reaper with their eyes. Office? What's going on here? He asked. They were trying to hassle you, big brother, so I tied them up, Office answered casually. Ichigo couldn't prevent an "Are you serious?" look from forming on his face. The three captives' faces turned pale with horror when they heard the dragon address Ichigo as her older brother. I appreciate the concern, Office, but I really don't think this is necessary. Besides, look at them. They look as if they'll die from fear any second. Office looked at him blankly for a moment, then faced the chain trio. With a wave of her hand the chains released them and a magic transportation circle materialized beneath their feet. You're lucky that big brother doesn't want to punish you. Leave him alone from now on. The hero faction members simply gave stiff nods before they were transported away. Turning back to Ichigo, Office unexpectedly hugged the orange-haired hero. Office, he asked in confusion. Are you feeling okay? Can you pat my head? Office requested. I spoke to Dummy Red and he told me that little girls normally hug their elder brothers like this and get them to pat their heads. Well, he's not entirely wrong, but this still feels kind of weird, Ichigo thought. He slowly raised his right hand and patted her head before beginning to gently ruffle her hair. This feels nice, the dragon commented, a hint of comfort in her usually empty tone. Ichigo's house. Kuro, Nina, and Koneko were sat at the table eating some food prepared by the female fragment. Suddenly, Koneko clenched her fist, snapping her chopsticks into two. What the? Is everything okay, Koneko? Nina asked in worry. Yeah, you gave us quite a scare right now, agreed Kuro. The petite rook's face morphed into a scowl. I sense a disturbance with Ichigo Ni-san. Someone is trying to take my place. With Ichigo. The teenage substitute felt a shiver race down his spine as he gently stroked Office's hair. Why do I feel as though things are about to get ridiculously crazy from now on, he thought fearfully. Chapter 24. Absolute Chaos. The Park. Getsuga Tensho. Ichigo yelled as he unleashed his signature attack on Cao and Hercules. His two opponents took defensive stances and tried to stand their ground against the crescent wave of blue energy. Cao spun his true Longinus to redirect the technique whilst Hercules kept up his guard and let it take the brunt of the attack. Both were looking worse for wear and were taking deep breaths. Earlier, Ichigo had gotten lucky and managed to catch them off guard with his new Ryo technique. The sudden electric explosion had managed to knock out Jean and heavily injured the male pair of the group, preventing Hercules from activating his balance breaker. They still put up a fight despite that, so Ichigo took advantage of their damaged states and repeatedly blitzed around them using Flash Step while dishing out heavy hits. The strange fog around them began to surround the trio from the hero faction. It seems that I underestimated your combat prowess, remarked Cao. You're not only physically strong, but you have a good mind as well if your earlier surprise attack is anything to judge by. We'll retreat for now, but I'm sure that we'll meet again. The unnatural fog completely covered them from the teenage protector's view, then dispersed, taking them along with it and leaving Ichigo alone in the park once again. I should probably let the leaders of the three factions know about this at the meeting tomorrow, he mused as he reverted back to his civilian clothing. Something tells me that this is going to be one of those long-term problems. The next day, ORC Clubroom. The Gremory Peerage along with Ichigo and the fragments were gathered together. In a few minutes, they'd be heading to the meeting between the three factions to give their account of the battle against Kokabiel, save for Koneko and Gasper, who would remain in the clubroom. Gasper was sitting in a cardboard box, but wasn't trying to hide inside of it. Issei had loaned him a handheld game console to use for the duration of the meeting. Koneko had a book in her hands and a box full of various sweets and snacks, which she placed on the coffee table. "All right, we'll see you guys once everything's over and done with," said Ichigo. "No problem, Ichigo-san," replied the half-vampire. "I hope everything goes well," said Koneko. "Well, let's get going everyone," Rias instructed, leading the way. The meeting room. The group entered the room after knocking and being granted permission. Inside, seated at the table, were Sirzex with Grafia standing behind him and a black-haired woman with a childlike appearance but developed body, Azazel, and finally a blonde man with gentle features and a golden halo, behind whom stood Irina. She had a somewhat tense expression upon seeing them, particularly Zenovia. Vali was leaning against the wall behind Azazel's seat with a neutral but slightly bored expression on his face. Sona and her queen Tsubaki were also there. "Ah, I'm pleased you could make it," greeted Sirzex. He then addressed the others in the room. "Everyone, this is my younger sister Rias and her peerage, excluding Ichigo Kurosaki, the young man with spiky orange hair, and those next to him. They are her friends and fellow students at Kuo Academy." "Is he the same one who beat down Riza and gave him a fear of Suzaku's in addition to his fear of dragons?" the woman seated next to Sirzex asked abruptly. Her tone was energetic and slightly childish. "Yes, he is Seafall," the red-haired male answered with a smile, as though he'd been expecting her question. "Ichigo Kurosaki, I would like to thank you for defeating Kokabiel and averting another great war," said the blonde man with the halo. "I am Michael, leader of the Angel faction." "You're welcome, Michael-san," Ichigo responded. "Well, now that the introductions are out of the way," Azazel began. "Why don't we get on with this meeting?" "Indeed," agreed Michael. "Just to make sure, but everyone currently present in this room knows the secret of what happened in the Great War." A noticeable tension settled over the room at his words. Then, with a look of great sadness and discomfort, he said the closely guarded secret regarding his faction. Whether Irina knew from beforehand but didn't really acknowledge it, or whether she truly didn't know, her face turned surprised and disbelieving. Then, the leaders of the factions began discussing the recent scuffle with Kokabiel and questioned Azazel on whether or not he really had nothing to do with it. The dark-haired man simply dismissed it all calmly and affirmed that Kokabiel had acted on his own behind his back, hence the reason he gave Ichigo permission to use lethal force if need be. After that, they asked the Rias and her peerage to give an account of their battle against the now-deceased Kadra Fallen. When they were done, they asked Ichigo and his fragment friends for the same. The teenage substitute mentioned how he had been initially intercepted by Nemesis and how he had been assisting the fallen angel, though not necessarily for the sake of starting another war. When he was done speaking, Azazel straight up stated that they should just declare peace already and unite. The other leaders began questioning him on his motives and the reasons why he was researching so much into sacred gears. He nonchalantly told them that the research was his hobby and offered to share his info with them. After all of that seemed to be done, the man made one more unexpected suggestion. "Well, we all seem to be in agreement," Azazel started. "So all that's left now is to take the opinions of those besides us whose power can alter the course of things. In other words, the two heavenly dragon hosts and the orange-haired enigma." Vali smirked when the leaders looked at him for his answer. "I don't care. As long as I get to fight against strong people, I'm fine with anything." "That's all right," Azazel remarked. "Even in peace, you'll still get many opportunities to face powerful opponents." "What about you, Red Dragon Emperor?" "Who, me?" Issei asked in surprise before quickly turning a little nervous. "Well, this is quite a big decision and I'm not really used to stuff like this," he apologized. The head fallen angel gave the brown-haired pawn a smirk, one that made Ichigo feel as though what he'd hear next would annoy him immensely. "All right, let me put it into context for you," Azazel began. "If there's peace, then you can spend every day happily with your MSTR, enjoying your life and copulating with her. Ichigo resisted the urge to both facepalm and sock the old pervert in the jaw. Issei, however, had a look of intrigued shock whilst Ria's face was redder than her hair. The Grigori leader continued. But if there's war, then you'll have to spend every day fighting and training. You won't get to relax and you won't get the chance to get NTMT with your beloved MSTR. Understand, Issei Hyudo? Is summoned his boosted gear and punched it high into the air. Peace, he declared loudly. I vote for peace. I want to be able to enjoy my time with Bucho. Rias was covering her face out of embarrassment, although Slycer looked like he was trying his hardest to stop himself from bursting out laughing. That done, Azazel turned to face Ichigo, who had his trademark scowl in place. So, what's your stance on this? He asked. Peace, the teenage Soul Reaper replied without missing a beat. There's no way I'd ever vote for war. It ruins the lives of innocent people. Well, it seems that we're all in agreement, Azazel announced jovially. One moment, Michael gently interrupted. There are a few more things I wish to ask. Ichigo Kurosaki-kun, if you don't mind me asking, would you inform us all a little more about just who you are? It is as Azazel earlier joked, but you are more or less an enigma to us. The spiker-haired substitute sighed. All right, he relented. As you may or may not already know, my stance is neutral between the factions. I've been tasked by my predecessor with hunting down and eliminating beings known as fragments if they are hostile. Any non-hostiles, like my two fragment friends behind me, are okay. Ichigo-kun, could you please tell us who this predecessor of yours is? Slycer inquired. Ichigo scratched the back of his head. Well, I've never actually got his name and he's sort of passed on now. All I know was that he fought some great beast that desired indiscriminate destruction and carnage, but couldn't completely defeat it, so he used some secret technique to seal it and fragment a part of its power. Those 200 fragments have gained sentience and it's up to me to deal with them. Also, some of them are more intelligent than others. At the moment, there's one intelligent hostile who calls himself Nemesis, the one who was a little involved in the recent skirmish with Kokabeel. While we're at it, how have you stayed off the radar for all these years? Azazel asked. The young war hero gave a somber smile. You could say that my hometown is protected. Don't be offended, but none of you will be able to detect or reach it. Unfortunately, that also applies to me now that I've left its boundaries. The faction leaders, in addition to everyone else present, save for Varley, who looked somewhat intrigued, became a bit downcast at his words. I'm sorry to have made you mention this loss, Michael apologized, feeling slightly guilty since he began the queries to the teenager. Ichigo calmly told him it was okay. Michael then turned to Azazel. I also wanted to ask why you've been gathering a large number of sacred gears and users recently despite having the White Dragon Emperor on your side. It seems as though you are preparing for war even though you're calling for peace. The fallen angel Governor-General gave a dry chuckle. That's because I am. His answer caused all the other leaders to tense and frown. Don't get me wrong. It's not against any of you. It's against some new group that's popped up recently. They're more or less just a terrorist group, but they're led by one of the strongest beings in existence, the Infinity Dragon Ophis. They call themselves the Chaos Brigade. The others went into shocked surprise. Ichigo then decided to speak up and clear something out for them. Funny you should mention them. A subgroup of it approached me only last night. Everyone in the room looked to him, paying attention to his every word. They have various groups within them. I encountered what I believe were the main members of the so-called hero faction, which consists of sacred gear users and descendants of legendary heroes. They wish to put humanity above the other supernatural races. They tried recruiting me through force, but I was able to fight them off and make them retreat. Also, Ophis is just a figurehead to this organization, the group's leader told me that clearly. They just gave her hollow promises to help her defeat Great Red so that she would help them. This is very troublesome, commented Slycer gravely. You can say that again, agreed Azazel. This is even more messed up than I initially thought. However, before anything further could be said, a strange sensation suddenly washed over everyone present. The next thing they knew, All of them besides the faction leaders, the twin dragon hosts, Rias, Kiba, and Zenovia, Ichigo, and the 3 fragments were frozen in time. Looks like it started, Azazel stated as he looked out the window. A barrier was over the school and an army of magicians were appearing in a multitude of magic circles. It seems as though the Chaos Brigade has decided to pay us a visit. Looks like only those of us who possess advanced abilities or irregular powers, and those in physical contact with them, are unaffected by this time stop. My guess is that they've taken the Dampier kid hostage and forced his forbidden Baylor view into a balance breaker state. The hostile magicians began firing magic blasts at the room, but the leaders swiftly erected a barrier to keep everyone safe. They've got Gasper? Issei questioned. Then that means they've got Koneko-chan hostage too. We need to get back to the clubroom and save them. Unfortunately, the enemy magician seemed to have blocked our teleportation magic, Sirzex told him. Grafia is currently analyzing their magic circle that they're using to reach here. Once she's done, we should be able to banish them all away. I think I have a way to save Gasper and Koneko, Rias announced. I still have a spare rook piece in the old school building. I see. You want to do a castling move, Sirzex said. Good thinking, Rias. Grafia will prepare a magic circle to transport you there. We should be able to get one more person with you as well. I'll go. Issei declared immediately. Those are my fellow peerage members and Kuhai's in there, I have to help them. Sirzex gave the teen a smile. Very well, Issei-kun. I leave my sister in your protection. Hey Issei, Ichigo called. Give them hell. I'm counting on you to dish out the punishment in my place, all right? Consider it done, the brown-haired pawn agreed with determination in his eyes. I'm ready to transport the 2 of you, Grafia told them, a new magic circle glowing near her. Just before they stepped into it, however, Azazel approached them. Here kid, take these, he instructed Issei, holding up 2 identical items that looked like bracelets with a gem embedded in each. I made these from my sacred gear research. Put one on the half-vampire kid to bring his sacred gear back under control. The other is for you. It can act as a substitute sacrifice for your incomplete balance breaker, but it's a one-time thing and don't overdo it. Thanks, replied Issei before taking the bracelets and stepping into the circle with Rias. A moment later, the pair vanished and in their place was a rook piece. Ichigo stepped over to one of the windows, shifting garb to his Soul Reaper uniform as he did so. The only problem left now is how to deal with these guys until Grafia-san manages to crack their teleportation and get rid of them, he stated. Leave it to us, said Kuro, having already summoned his sword to his hand. Standing next to him were Nina, Shadow in its mature battle form, Kiba, and Zenovia. The 2 Gremory Knights were holding their respective Sword of the Betrayer and Durandal at the ready. What about you, Varley? Azazel asked. The dark silver-haired teen stepped away from the wall with a smirk on his face. Why not, he complied. I need to blow off some steam anyway, I was getting pretty bored. Right. Seeing one of the 2 heavenly dragons should be more than enough to startle most of them. Show these guys that your title as the White Dragon Emperor isn't something to be taken lightly. Sirzex and Michael approached them. We'll create a momentary gap in the barrier. Use it to get outside, the redhead super devil told them. They all nodded to show their understanding. A moment later, a gap big enough for 2 people to pass through appeared in the golden barrier. They took that as their cue to bolt out of the room and into the outside. Varley materialized his divine dividing wings and flew up high. Then, with the moon behind him and an excited smile on his face, he called for his balance breaker. Vanishing dragon scale male, boomed Albient's voice as the white dragon armor manifested around his host's body. Varley then set to raining down magic shots onto the enemy magicians and swooping down to physically assault them from time to time. Nina donned her black battle armor and proceeded to fire blasts of ice at the enemy. Kuro ran between them and attacked with his blade. Shadow pounced at any magicians that were in range and slashed them apart to ribbons using its claws. Kiba and Zenovia used their night speed to dash around the enemies, dealing out strikes from their swords, Irina hanging around them and doing the same. As for Ichigo, he entered the fray whilst unleashing a wide Getsuga Tensho, catching many of the hostiles off guard with the sudden technique and its large size. After that, he set to flash-stepping around the battlefield and dealing punishing blows with Zangetsu. He also used his broad Zanpakuto to block or straight-up cut through enemy magic blasts if he didn't dodge them. The majority of the magicians gulped, realizing that they may have bit off more than they could chew. However, a new magic circle appeared on the battlefield, giving them a little bit more morale when they saw it. Inside the meeting room, the leaders frowned upon noticing the crest in the center of the circle. "Leviathan," Sir Zex muttered. "It seems as though our old enemies from the Civil War have joined this Chaos Brigade." Old School Building, ORC Clubroom. Issei and Rias appeared inside the old building, just after the entrance. Without wasting a moment, both MSTR and Pawn began dashing ahead towards the clubroom's location, where the presences of Koneko and Gasper could be felt. Upon reaching the door, Issei immediately smashed his gauntlet-clad left fist into it, busting it off its hinges. It slammed down onto two unfortunate magicians stood on the other side of it, knocking them out cold as it fell to the floor. "Koneko-chan, Gasper," the brown-haired teen called out in concern when he caught sight of the two first years. They were suspended in mid-air by some kind of glowing magical seal that they were bound to. Gasper's eyes looked different, his irises appearing red and hexagonal with golden slit pupils. His expression showed that he was in pain. Issei faced the remaining magicians around the pair, absent-mindedly noticing that they were all female for some reason. "Give them back," he demanded, undergoing another boost. "Hold it right there, devils," one of the Chaos Brigade magicians shouted back, drawing a knife and holding it near Gasper's throat. "Take a step closer, and I'll kill this half-vampire filth." Issei grit his teeth in a mix of frustration and anger. Gasper, though, began to cry. "Bucho, please kill me," he sobbed, tears streaming freely from his eyes. "I'm nothing but trouble to everyone else, and now this has happened. I don't want to be the reason for everyone else getting hurt, so please, just kill me." "No," Rias gently refuted. "Gasper, I don't care if you keep causing trouble for us. I want you to be happy, to enjoy life. So, keep causing mishaps for me and the others, because we don't care, Gasper. You are my bishop and someone beloved to me, so I will never do something as horrible as kill you." The Dhampir began crying even harder. "Bucho!" "Quiet," the magician shrieked. "You're fools. With a sacred gear like his, he would have served much better as a weapon. And you, Gremorieres, I'll enjoy killing you. A filthy being such as yourself doesn't deserve such a appealing appearance and body." "Oh, shut up," Issei snapped, shocking her into silence. "Or Gasper, how could you be so cowardly that you asked Bucho to kill you? Have you already forgotten what me and Ichigo told you? The promise that you made with me?" "No, I haven't, Issei-senpai," Gasper replied. "Then prove it to me," the Red Dragon Emperor demanded. He summoned Ascalon from his boosted gear and lightly cut his right hand. "Prove to me that you meant what you said back then. That you really understood what we told you. Show me what kind of a man you are, Gasper." As he finished his declaration, he moved his left arm out towards the captive first year, throwing his BLD off the blade and onto Gasper's face, near his mouth. Gasper snapped out of his awe and stuck his tongue out before licking the BLD immediately after. His eyes pulsed crimson before his form burst into a swarm of black bats with red eyes. The bats set to attacking the hostile magicians, causing them to scream in terror. "No! Stay away from me," one screeched when she felt multiple little bites across her body and the subsequent drawing of BLD. "Ah! He's not only taking our BLD, but our magic power too," screamed another. The swarm of bats moved away from the frightened women and flew up towards the ceiling. Then, their eyes glowed red and the panicking magicians froze completely. "Issei-senpai, finish them off." Gasper's voice called from the bats. "All right, leave it to me." Issei agreed as he quickly dashed between the stopped enemies and tapped all of them. Returning to Ria's side, he clicked his fingers, activating his custom spell, shredding their clothing. I'd like to see them try and cause something while they're like that, he commented. Under normal circumstances, he would have stopped to ogle, but the pawn understood that they had bigger concerns at the moment. The bats came down and flocked together prior reforming Gaspar's normal body. Meanwhile, Issei and Rias released Koenko from her bindings and set her down. Thank you Issei-senpai, Bucho, the petite girl acknowledged. Way to go Gaspar, Issei congratulated when the blonde bishop approached them. He then lightly flicked the smaller boy's forehead, eliciting a small ouch from him. I never want to hear you say stuff like that again, all right? We're family and we all look out for each other. I understand, Gaspar replied. Oh yeah, I almost forgot, said Issei. He took out one of the bracelets that Azazel had given him and put on Gaspar's arm. There, that should help to keep your sacred gear under control. Everybody else should be freed from the time stop now, said Rias. Come on everyone, we need to hurry back to the others. With the leaders. Suddenly, all those who had been frozen by the forbidden Baylor View's force balance breaker were freed. Who? What's going on? Asked Aquino upon seeing the situation outside. You're free. That's good, it must mean that Rias and Issei-kun were successful with the rescue, remarked Surzex. We are currently under attack by a terrorist organization calling themselves the Chaos Brigade. The others are outside fighting to buy time for Graphia to crack their magic gates formula and reverse it. While Surzex was bringing them up to speed, Azazel was up in the sky facing off against Kateria Leviathan. The old Mao faction member had attempted to destroy the meeting room and the leaders with it, but they had erected a powerful barrier with their combined powers. The head fallen angel then requested if he could face off the descendant of Leviathan and test something out, to which the others obliged. Meanwhile, the others were dealing with the incoming waves of hostile magicians. Ichigo batted away a magic blast using his oversized Zanpakuto before retaliating with a nameless Getsuga that took out the offending enemy and a few of his comrades with him. The summoning gate is ready, bring out the beast, ordered one of the magicians. Another magic circle appeared on the ground, but this one was larger than the normal ones that transported the enemy humans in. There was the brief sound of rattling chains before a bright light emanated from the circle. When it died down, Ichigo's eyes widened as he regarded the large fragment that had been brought to the field. It was easily 4 times his own height and stood upon 4 muscular legs that ended in clawed feet. It was fettered with glowing purple chains that wrapped around each of its legs, its 2 powerful arms which ended in mighty pincers, and around its neck. Its head looked like a demonic cross between a bull and a mantis, having a pair of long and pointed horns along with 2 circular orange eyes. The fragment screeched as it fought against the magic chains binding it. Everyone get back! Ichigo shouted as some of the magicians near the fragment began muttering and loosening the chains. I'll deal with this thing. The chains completely released the fragment and vanished into flecks of magical energy. The fragment roared. It turned its ugly head towards the spiky-haired Soul Reaper, as though able to sense that he was the one to slay it and its kind. The fragment spat a glob of fluorescent yellow liquid towards its opponent. Not sticking around to get hit by the incoming projectile, Ichigo flash-stepped out of the way and into the air. When the strange liquid made contact with the ground, there was an acidic hissing noise and the concrete seemed to melt slightly. Having failed its initial attack, the hulking being tried to swipe at the airborne substitute with one of its claws, but it was parried by the teen's sword. Seeing that the fragment was now somewhat open and vulnerable, Ichigo unleashed a quick Getsuga Tensho at it. It didn't succeed in cleaving the monster though, only leaving it with a gash across its muscle-packed torso and forcing to stumble back a little. Staying cautious, Ichigo equipped his shock burner as his enemy regained its balance and focused on him again. The fragment raised one of its claws towards the teen again, but didn't try to swing it at him this time. Instead, a sphere of orange energy began to swirl and grow inside the space of the open claw. In response, Ichigo started charging up blue lightning around his left hand. The fragment's energy sphere stopped growing and remained in place for about a second prior to bursting forward as a beam. At that moment, the orange-haired hero punched his left fist forward and blasted out the accumulated blue lightning. The two opposing attacks met each other head-on, but Ichigo's attack almost immediately began cleaving through the fragment's laser and continuing towards the hostile entity. The giant fragment retracted its arm upon getting shocked by the lightning discharge. Letting out a growl of annoyance, it lurched forward and swung both arms towards the floating teen from opposite directions. Ichigo dropped to the ground to avoid the strike, only to rapidly jump back as his adversary changed the course of its arms and swung down to follow him. A cloud of dust was kicked up when the claws made contact with the floor. Ichigo flew up, then zoomed over to the fragment's head. He landed on top of it between its horns and quickly stabbed his blade down into its skull. The oversized creature roared in anger and thrashed its head around in an attempt to shake the orange-haired substitute off, but he maintained a firm grasp on Zangetsu's hilt and held on. "Getsuga Tensho," he shouted out, blatting his signature technique straight into the fragment's head at point-blank range. Flash stepping to the ground a few paces away, he saw the thing's hulking body missing its head and beginning to fall down. Before it touched the ground though, its body broke up into smoky black mist, some of which streaked into Kuro, Nina, and Shadow whilst the rest dissipated into nothingness. Looking up, he saw that Azazel was still facing off against the enemy devil called Kateria, although it seemed that he clearly had the upper hand. Checking on the others, he saw that they were all fine, besides Kiba, who was about to be attacked from behind. Ichigo was about to rush forth and help when there was a sudden call of dragon shot, and a red ball of energy blasted the enemy magician away. Issei then ran into view and approached Kiba, with Rias, Koneko, and Gasper behind him. "Hey, make sure to watch yourself, pretty boy," Issei lightly remarked. "That guy almost got you." "Thanks, Issei-kun," said Kiba. "I'll try to make sure that it doesn't happen again." Ichigo felt a strange sensation from above, so he true-ned his gaze up towards Azazel again. The Grigori leader was holding what looked like a small golden spear stake in his hand. He was briefly engulfed by a golden light which quickly died down, revealing him in a full set of golden dragon armor similar to the scale mail, with a matching trident held in his hand. "Downfall dragon, another armor," Azazel stated upon seeing Kateria's surprised expression. "Whoa, he's got a dragon armor sacred gear too," exclaimed Issei. "I can sense the power of Fafnir, one of the dragon kings, coming from that armor," Drake informed his host. "Although it seems that the fallen angel has forced his artificial sacred gear into a burst state instead of achieving a true balance breaker, so it's only going to last this one fight until he repairs it. Behold," continued Azazel. "This is a result of my sacred gear research. Something much more interesting and rewarding than some stupid and pointless war." "So what?" Kateria snapped arrogantly once she got out of her stupor. "I'm using one of Ophis' snakes, I'm leagues above you." She then quickly dodged a light spear from the fallen angel leader, only narrowly avoiding getting hit. "You know, that's the kind of thing a cheesy villain who gets quickly killed off would say," he said calmly. He then proceeded to assault the Leviathan descendant with an assortment of light spears along with melee attacks using his golden dragon trident. Realizing that she was going to be beaten, Kateria's arm morphed into a mass of tendrils that latched onto Azazel's left forearm and melded to the armor. An array of small magic circles then appeared over her transfigured arm. "Even if you kill me, I'll make sure to drag you down as well," she declared triumphantly. "Capturing my arm and planning to blow yourself up," Azazel calmly observed. "How naive and desperate." Then, to the shock of everyone spectating, he nonchalantly hacked off his left arm just below the elbow. Capitalizing on his opponent's open state, he threw the trident into her chest. "Here. You can have my arm, although an opponent like you isn't really worth it." Kateria couldn't even say anything as she fell down then blew up, her body getting completely consumed by the explosion. "Seriously? He just cut off his arm like it was nothing." Issei commented in disbelief. "I don't know whether he's smart, or just plain crazy," Ichigo voiced. He was half expecting the Governor General to suddenly grow a new arm, but no such thing happened. Only a small magic circle momentarily appeared at the stump to staunch the bleeding. Azazel's golden armor vanished and a blue orb floated in front of him. Look like there's still plenty of room for improvement, he said as he took hold of the gem and briefly kissed it. Stick around for a while longer, Dragon King Fafnir. It's done, Xerxes announced from within the barrier. Grafia has managed to reverse their gateway, we're going to send them all away. Now, the silver-haired maid gave a small nod to her king and the magic circle in her hand spun. Without any delay, all the hostile magicians gave a gasp of surprise as they were forcefully teleported away from the school. However, before they could rejoice at winning the battle, there was a loud boom, followed soon after by a large magic blast ramming into an off-guard Azazel, pushing him down from the sky and into the ground. Hey Varley, you should be more careful, the head fallen angel stated as he lifted himself out of the small crater. There was a small glint in his eye that Ichigo couldn't quite place. If I didn't know any better, then I'd say that you actually hit me on purpose. Varley was still floating up high in the sky, clad in his balance breaker. Sorry Azazel, but things look more fun fighting from this side. Ichigo's eyes, as well as a few others, widened as they realized the implication of the White Dragon Emperor's statement. Great, so you're a part of the Chaos Brigade too, huh? Azazel sighed. Just great. In any case, what do you want to do, Varley? Even if I'm like this, I'm more than capable of taking you on. I think there are one or two things that I should clear up, said Varley calmly. Suddenly, a multitude of devil wings emerged from his back. My true name is Varley Lucifer. I'm a descendant of the original Lucifer. His revelation took everyone by surprise. Geez, you've got to be kidding me, Azazel commented with a slight groan. Add that heritage to his ridiculous talent and love for battle, this guy's the strongest White Dragon Emperor past, present and most like future as well. Issei Hyudo, Varley called, gaining the Gremory pawn's attention. I must say, I'm disappointed in you as a rival. When I first saw you, your progress with your sacred gear was so low and you didn't even possess a complete balance breaker, you still don't actually. I thought that you were just a boring person, so I thought to investigate you and your lineage to see if there might be anything special. Do you want to know what I found? Issei gave a small gulp, anxiety clearly visible in his brown eyes. What did you find? Nothing, answered Varley simply, yet in a disappointed tone. Nothing special whatsoever. You were just an ordinary and boring human with completely ordinary and boring parents as well as ancestors. Nothing special whatsoever. I became distraught when I discovered this. How am I to have a satisfying battle with you as my rival when you're so weak and have nothing remotely remarkable about you? The only thing that could be counted was you becoming a devil. But now, I think I've thought of a way that I can make you into a powerful enough rival to give me a truly exciting battle. His last sentence was said ominously and gave a bad feeling to Issei and his friends. What are you talking about? Issei inquired. To put it simply, I shall make you an avenger. I'm going to kill your parents, Varley told him in response. Everyone's eyes went wide at his declaration. They just lead boring and simple lives anyway, so this will probably be the most interesting thing that will ever happen to them. Still, they are your parents and you seem quite close to them. Revenge is a powerful motivator. I'm sure that it will allow you to become someone truly powerful. Issei had his head bowed and his fist shaking in anger. Everyone around was watching him in concern. My parents? Issei said emptily, his head still bowed. You're threatening to kill my parents, just so you could get an interesting fight out of it, he roared as he raised his head to glare at Varley. Just who the hell do you think you are? A fierce red aura flared up around his body. He grabbed the bracelet that Azazel had given him and held it tightly. Drake, do it! Balance! Breaker! The aura surrounding Issei's form became even wilder at his words and turned much more intense. The outline of his dragon armor appeared around him like last time, but Drake gave out a different call this time around. Welsh Dragon Scale Buster! Drake's disembodied voice boomed. The armor materialized around the brown-haired teen, but there were some slight differences. The jets on the back of the armor were already open and looked more developed. Also, the gauntlets covering his arms were larger and looked a lot stronger, with what appeared to be twin vents at the back of each and an additional one halfway on either side. Crimson red energy briefly shot out of the vents and jets as Issei took a stance. Azazel whistled appreciatively as he examined the armor. Now this is interesting. The kid's actually developed his own subspecies instead of gaining the usual scale male balance breaker. The jets on the back of Issei's armor blasted out emerald green energy as Issei propelled himself up towards Varley. The moment he was within range, the Red Dragon Emperor rammed his fist into his rival's gut and winded him. Before Varley could retaliate, however, the vents on Issei's fist flared to life as they blasted out Red Dragon energy, boosting the punch's power and knocking the White Dragon Emperor away. Underneath his helmet, Varley gave a wide, excited smile. This was more like it, a serious fight where both of them could clash with as much force as they wished without any interference. He sped forward to engage Issei in a furious bout of hand-to-hand combat, both sides repeatedly trading and blocking blows. Varley divided his rival's power, making him halt due to the sudden drain. Seizing the opportunity, he smashed both fists into Issei's chest and sent him plummeting to the ground. "Good, but is that all you've got?" Varley taunted. "DMN, I forgot that this guy can divide people's power for himself," Issei murmured. He boosted to regain his stolen strength. "You gaining a subspecies was a nice surprise, but I hope that you have more to offer, otherwise this fight could quickly turn boring," said Varley. Issei grit his teeth and rocketed back up using his jets. "Stop treating everything like some sick game for your amusement." Issei punched his opponent across the face, then followed it up with a knee to the gut. Pressing on with his assault, he gripped Varley by the throat using his right hand, then charged up his raised left fist with crimson energy. The vents on the gauntlet blasted out streams of dragon power, propelling Issei's fist into Varley's torso, destroying his chest plate. Red ethereal energy wings that lacked membranes emerged from Issei's jets, letting him levitate in place. Before he could be sent too far away, Varley recovered and regained his posture. Wasting no time, he zoomed back in the Red Dragon Emperor's direction and delivered a right cross. Issei managed to avoid the attack, but got caught in the side by Varley's kick. He boosted upon blocking the next punch and retaliated by charging up some magic power and closing his fist around it, then sending a dragon smash straight to Varley's face, shattering the helmet. Undeterred by the damage, his opponent divided his power again and dealt a rapid succession of 3 punches to his face, breaking his helmet too. "Ascalon!" Issei called, summoning the legendary Dragon Slayer's blade to jut out from his left fist. He took a swing at Varley, who hastily dodged the strike. "Be careful, Varley," Albion warned his host. "The power of that Dragon Slayer blade will deal heavy damage to you in addition to the damage you'll receive from it being a holy sword." "I know," Varley calmly replied before a mad grin broke out on his face. "But that just makes it even more exhilarating. I haven't felt this challenged in a long time." "Hey partner," Drake called Issei. "Do you see those small flecks of energy being released by his sacred gee's wings?" "Yeah, I do." "What's so special about them?" Issei confirmed then asked. "Divine Dividing halves the opponent's power and add it to the user's, but like there's a limit to how much you can boost, there's a limit to how much he can absorb," the Welsh dragon explained. If the user's limit has been reached, the excess power is shed from the wings to avoid an overload. "Thanks for the info," said Issei. He saw Varley reform his complete armor. "I'll see what I can do to exploit that." The pair rushed towards each other again, trading furious blows that cracked their respective armors. Then, Varley began to repeatedly divide Issei, who began boosting to compensate. With a loud battle cry, both struck each other at the same time, Issei's fist being enhanced by the thruster vents and completely smashing the armor on Varley's torso and head, whilst Varley's fist was followed up by a powerful magic bullet, destroying Issei's chest plate. Both fighters were blasted away from each other and fell to the ground. Varley laughed as they stood back up. Taking to the skies once more, he reformed his full armor again. "Issei Hyudo, it seems that you are a worthy rival after all," he declared with a hint of glee. "I never thought that you would be able to face me like this despite how plain and weak you initially seemed." Damn it, this guy just doesn't know when to quit, Issei groaned on the ground. He then noticed a blue gem, one that he remembered being from his rival's armor. He quickly picked it up. Hey Drake, do you think I could use this? I don't know, partner, his tenant admitted. Mine and Albient's powers are opposites. You trying to use both will most likely fail, but there's also the possibility that it will work and you'll gain some of that power for yourself. It's up to you in the end. Alright, I'm going to try something crazy, Issei stated. I'm counting on you to back me up, buddy. Everyone around watched as Issei smashed the green jewel on his right gauntlet, then slammed the blue gem in its place. Instantly, opposing auras of red and white began swirling around the gauntlet, accompanied by green and blue crackles of energy. What are you doing? Inquired Varley, bewildered by what he was seeing his rival do. It's futile, boy, Albient's chastising voice boomed out loud, addressing the brown-haired pawn. Our powers are complete opposites. You will never succeed in trying to merge them together, the only thing that you will do is destroy your body with the opposing energies. Like hell I will. Issei shouted back as he raised his unstable right arm and fought against the pain. I'm going to take this power and make it my own. Then I'll use it to kick your sorry butt, Varley. My host may be an idiotic fool, Drake announced. But his drive and force of will are nothing to laugh at Albion. If there's anything that I've learnt in my time with him as my host, it's that fools like him, especially when their hearts burn passionately and their drive is undeterred, they can achieve the impossible. Issei roared loudly in both determination and pain as the opposing energies began to coalesce on his arm, swirling around each other with increasing intensity all the while. There was a flash of light that momentarily blinded them all. Vanishing dragon power obtained, declared Drake's voice from Issei's right gauntlet. When the light died down, they were all surprised to see that the Red Dragon Emperor's right gauntlet had turned a pure white whilst the gems on it were now blue. All right, cried Issei triumphantly. I'll call this thing the dividing gear. Congratulations on your success, partner, Drake told him. But know that what you just did is not without its drawbacks. By forcing Albient's power with mine like that, it seems as though a large portion of your lifespan has been cut, even as a devil, who normally live for a very long time. It's okay, Issei shrugged off. I didn't really plan on living such a long life anyway. He was cut off from saying anything further by Varley's sudden laughing. How interesting, he stated in an amused and happy tone. However, let's see if you can overcome this technique. Half dimension. A strange wave of power began to radiate of the armor-clad team. Soon, the nearby gym building began shrinking in size. Oi, what the heck's going on here? Issei asked uneasily. That power repeatedly halves the size of anything it comes into contact with, Azazel explained to him. Seriously? Issei exclaimed in alarm. Yep, Azazel affirmed. Here, let me put it into context for you. It constantly shrinks everything, in other words, unless you stop him quick, he'll keep halving the size of your beloved MSTR's precious melons, right until there's nothing left. Are you serious? Ichigo thought as he stared at the head-fallen angel in disbelief. Although, saying something like that will probably get Issei riled up. His prediction was proved correct a few seconds later, when Issei's horrified expression morphed into one of pure, unbridled rage. How dare you, he screamed furiously, surprising Varley, who hadn't heard the exchange between him and Azazel. I'll never forgive you, you monster. He began rapidly boosting over and over as his aura skyrocketed. The twin jets on his scale buster's back exploded with jade-green flames as he shot up towards his opponent. He instantly dealt out a rocket-propelled punch to the confused White Dragon Emperor the moment he was within striking range. He continued to lay down punishing blows using his dragon power-shrouded fists, without relenting a bit, cracking the white armor further and further with every explosive strike. How dare you threaten Bucho's glorious Appai like that? Issei demanded as he shattered Varley's helmet again. He then used the stolen portion of Albient's power to divide Varley, letting him have a taste of his own medicine. What are you talking about? Varley asked in genuine confusion just before he was punched then divided yet again. This is for Bucho's melons, Issei declared as he struck his enemy with another boosted strike. This one's for Akino-san's. For Asia's still growing ones. For all the ones so small that they'd completely disappear if reduced any further, like Koneko-chan's. By this point, Issei firmly gripped Varley's throat with his right hand. I'm going to charge up those DMN wings of yours till they burst and break. He raised his left fist up high, a crimson aura violently swirling around it like a tempest. Now Drake, transfer all power to Ascalon. Transfer. Drake's voice boomed from Issei's left gauntlet. A brilliant golden aura mingled in with the storming crimson, causing Varley's eyes to widen in fear the moment he saw it. Take this, you jerk! Issei shouted as he brutally punched Varley's chest, completely shattering the armor. Transfer! Upon his command, the red and gold energy flooded the dark silver-haired teen's body, destroying all of his armor and making him cry out in pain and hack out BLD as he plummeted to the ground. Varley harshly collided with the concrete upon reaching it, whilst Issei gently touched down, although he stumbled a bit when he landed. He was panting heavily and sweat could be seen on the sides of his exposed head. His armor was riddled with cracks too, looking as though it would fall apart if it took any further hits. Ahaha! Varley laughed happily as he pushed himself up, wiping the BLD from his mouth when he was standing upright again. Amazing! I can't remember the last time I had so much fun during a battle. I actually want to see how you'll fare against my juggernaut drive. Varley, stop! Albion commanded. Your body has taken heavy damage from Ascalon as well as from his punches. Do not try entering Juggernaut Drive in your current state. However, his words fell on deaf ears. I, who am about to awaken, Varley began chanting. Varley! Do you really intend to be left at the mercy of my power? This guy still wants to keep going? Issei remarked in disbelief. He straightened out his stance. Fine, I'll just have to beat him up again. Suddenly, Varley was interrupted by a black armor-clad fist slamming into his cheek, shocking everyone who was watching. In the next second, he was flying away from Ichigo's outstretched fist and rolling haphazardly across the floor. I'll handle things from here on, Issei, the teenage substitute told the Gremory pawn. You're running on fumes right now and need a break. What are you talking about? I can still fight him. Issei denied. Fine, I'll just prove my point, Ichigo stated as he stepped up to him. The orange-haired young man pushed Issei's chest, making him fall down with a yelp. His armor also vanished into a mass of red energy that hastily dispersed. Ichigo pulled him up by his arm. Just sit this one out. Besides, Rias looks like she was really concerned, so just go to her. He pushed his friend towards the redhead heiress, who eagerly caught and embraced him. Issei, I'm so proud of you, she whispered into his ear. You fought enough for now, please just let Ichigo handle him. All right, Bucho, if you really think so, Issei relented happily and relaxed into her hold. Varley was looking at Ichigo with an excited smirk on his face when the protector turned to face him. I've actually been wanting to fight you ever since I saw you take down Kokabiel, the battle maniac revealed. Well, looks like you'll finally get your wish, Ichigo replied neutrally, but internally groaned at how similar Varley was to Kenpachi. Then, his spiritual pressure surged out and pressed down on everyone, even though it was mainly being focused on the dark silver-haired teen. Just to let you know though, I really hate backstabbing traitors. Balance break. A geyser of pyro-electricity erupted from him, the crimson flames turning obsidian black and the blue lightning shifting to a red hue, then dispersed, revealing Ichigo wearing his Inferno Bolt. Varley quickly overcame his astonishment at the heavy pressure weighing down on him oppressively, his mouth stretching out into a full-blown smile. Balance break. Ichigo sighed as the white armor formed around Varley's body once again. Without waiting for Varley to make a move, Ichigo flash-stepped over to him and threw two rapid punches in succession. A flame-infused one to his face, shattering his visor, and a lightning-infused one to his abdomen, severely cracking the armor before Varley was sent sprawling away. Recovering mid-roll, Varley sped towards Ichigo whilst readying a punch. The teenage Soul Reaper deflected the strike by summoning Zangetsu and batting the offending fist away. Capitalizing on Varley's unbalanced state, Ichigo's right hand let go of the Zanpakuto's hilt and became surrounded with the Shock Burner's twin elements just before embedding itself into his opponent's side. There was an explosive impact that shattered the armor around the hit and sent Varley flying away from Ichigo again. "This guy's pretty smart," Azazel commented. "He's not just throwing powerful punches Varley's way without any thought, he's actually forcing Varley to keep a distance so he has minimal chance to use Divide on him." "Really?" it asked Issei, still being held up by Rias, not that he was complaining though. "I thought that he was just throwing him around like he does to every enemy. Still, I can't believe how easy Ichigo's making it look to fight that guy and break his armor." "Ni-san is strong, but he uses his brain in battle too," Koneko agreed. "It really would have been amazing if he were a devil," Surzek stated in a somewhat lamenting tone. "But he wants to stay human and we should respect his decision." "True, although I believe that any of our factions would like to have him in their ranks," said Michael. "I suppose that is another good reason for us to truly unify and declare peace, then we can all benefit from his aid." Varley sent a trio of magic bullets speeding towards Ichigo. He swiftly cut through all of them using his large blade. Varley was right in front of him after he dealt with the last one, an expression that said "I've got you now" present on his face. He sent a right hook aimed at Ichigo's temple, which the latter quickly blocked using his left gauntlet. Due to the angle and position he was in, Ichigo couldn't use Zangetsu's blade against his opponent, so he sufficed by ramming the hilt into Varley's gut, breaking through the armor and knocking the wind out of him. Whilst Varley was still doubled over, Ichigo punched him in the chest with his now free left fist, then blasted him away with a bolt of red lightning. Varley quickly got back up after hitting the ground, taking a breath before fully reforming his armor. In response, Ichigo held out his Zanpakuto towards Varley while gripping his right bicep with his left hand. The cloth from the oversized weapon's hilt began wrapping around his outstretched arm. The teenage war hero suppressed a smirk when he saw Varley leaping towards him. "Bankai," Ichigo muttered under his breath. Instantly, red outlined black spiritual power surrounded him and obscured his body from view, but some of it shot out like a cannon blast to meet the approaching White Dragon Emperor. Varley cried out in surprise and pain as the energy smashed into him, obliterating his armor and singing some of his skin. The energy around Ichigo disappeared, showing him in his Bankai attire with the sleeker Tensor Zangetsu in his grip. His opponent wearily stood back up, a serious look now in his eyes along with the exhilarated gleam. "Varley, don't do it," Albion warned. "I don't care, Albion," the dark silver-haired teen refuted. "Besides, I still have enough magic power left to use it safely for a few minutes at least." Summoning his sacred gear wings, Varley began to chant. "I, who am about to awaken, am the heavenly dragon who has taken the principles of supremacy from God." Everyone tensed as an ominous feeling came over them all. "I envy the infinite, and I pursue the dream. I shall become the white dragon of supremacy, and I shall take you to the limits of white paradise." Albion's voice boomed from the divine dividing, although it seemed darker. "Juggernaut drive activated." The familiar white dragon armor clothed Varley again, but it quickly started shifting and changing. He became larger and the armor morphed to become much more draconic in appearance, making him look like a miniature dragon, complete with a powerful tail. He pounced on Ichigo, who rapidly jumped out of the way using his enhanced speed. Not giving up so easily, Varley swiped his clawed hand towards the airborne Soul Reaper. Ichigo blocked the claws using his blade, then surged a black Getsuga Tensho through it and parried the strike. Speeding away, he hurled an ebony fireball at the transformed Varley, the attack exploding upon making contact. Varley rushed through the explosion unfazed, trying to bite into his opponent. Ichigo dived out of the way, but was caught by the sweep of the pseudo-dragon's tail, knocking him to the ground. He quickly rolled out of the way to avoid becoming pasted under Varley's stomp. With a loud battle cry, Ichigo unleashed a black Getsuga against his foe, one that matched his size. Varley was forced back and knocked down from move. Appearing above him in midair, Ichigo threw a large lightning bolt at him. Varley roared loudly as the red electricity coursed through both his armor and body. Moving against the agony, he lurched his upper body up and swiped at Ichigo, shooting a large magic blast when the spiky-haired protector dodged. Ichigo ended up taking the brunt of the attack head-on, being pushed back through the air after it hit. He felt a pair of oversized hands grab his body, preventing any movement. He saw Varley's draconic helmet staring at him right in front of his face just before the White Dragon Emperor divided his power, then slammed him into the concrete. Surrounding himself with his sacred Gi's twin elements, Ichigo prevented Varley from striking him again, using the opportunity to push himself out of the floor's forced embrace. Activating his Inferno Bolt's triple boost to recover his stolen strength, he raised his sword high above his head. Releasing the pyro-electricity, he called out his signature technique and sent it out as a large wave towards his opponent. Meanwhile, all of the others, particularly the Gremory peerage, were watching the battle with shocked fascination. The leaders of each faction were surprised to see the orange-haired hero actually standing up against the infamous Juggernaut Drive, a feat very few could accomplish. Rias and her friends, on the other hand, were surprised to see Ichigo having difficulty fighting someone. "Put up a barrier around us," Ichigo suddenly ordered them as Varley fought against the Black Getsuga wave. "The strongest one that all of you together can create, do it now. If nothing else, it will take this heavy and choking pressure of us," Sir Zex consented. "I hope you're sure about this, Ichigo-kun." "I'm sure that he can take care of himself," Azazel assured. "Besides, he's probably got something up his sleeve." The faction leaders, along with Grafia, Rias, Akino, Aisha, Sona, and her queen, all contributed to form a strong barrier around the two combatants. "Ichigo Kurosaki, it's impressive that you're able to fight against my Juggernaut Drive like this," Varley remarked, fighting against the attack that was pushing him, but not really suffering any damage from it. "All right," Ichigo said calmly as he saw Varley finally overcome the Black Getsuga. "Time to kick things up a little." Holding his free hand up to his face with his fingers slightly curled like claws, Ichigo pulled his hand down in a tearing fashion. Black spiritual power with a red outline briefly covered his face before dispersing. On his face was a bone-white mask that looked like a menacing skull. A red line ran down on each side of the face, being interrupted only by his slightly slanted, rectangular eye holes and the skeletal teeth. The sclera of his eyes had become coal black, whilst the irises had turned bright yellow. He gave a loud, challenging roar, his voice sounding like two people speaking at once. The faction leaders and those with them stared in intrigue at the mask, noticing how Ichigo's presence now felt much darker and slightly oppressive, as though it was something predatory that wanted to consume them. Koneko had unconsciously flinched and recoiled a little, sensing the change much more accurately. "This is that dark power I've been sensing within Nissan since long ago, the one he told me that he had control over in the clubroom," the snow-haired rook thought. "Even then, I don't like this power. It feels cold and hollow. Nothing like Ichigo Nissan's normal warm and protective presence." Ichigo immediately launched another Getsuga at Varley, this one even larger and more powerful than the previous one. The hulking armor-clad teen was knocked to the ground. Ichigo began flickering across the area, creating numerous after-images of himself around Varley. Varley pushed himself off the ground and looked at the multiple Ichigos for a moment before letting out an enraged roar. His white armor shined briefly before a large magic blast pulsed out from him. Getting caught in the attack, Ichigo cried out as he was struck by the hostile energy. Varley was on him in an instant, pummeling him with punch after punch. After a few seconds, Ichigo retaliated with a powerful blow of his own, redirecting the incoming fist and cracking the metal. Dismissing his Zanpakuto, Ichigo jumped forward and moved both of his feet into Varley's chest, augmenting the strike with his twin elements. As his enemy stumbled back, he set to assaulting his face with alternating punches shrouded in fire, lightning, then both. Ichigo felt an unexpected drain on his strength as Varley sapped it via his divide ability, making him falter. Taking advantage of this, Varley headbutted him away. Black spiritual power tinged with red swirled around Ichigo wildly, pouring out from his Bankai's blade. With a shout, he launched another enhanced Black Getsuga at his foe. Varley started to divide the massive technique over and over in a bid to weaken and overcome it. At the rate he was going, he would probably be able to disperse it in a few seconds, despite all the damage that his armor was receiving. "Hey, King," called his inner hollow. "Go full hollow. Your full hollow form has the ability to absorb ambient energy in the air, like most hollows in Hueco Mundo do, particularly the tiny ones. It'll compensate for his divide." "All right," the spiky-haired teen replied mentally. "Let me just unequip my sacred gear since it's not compatible." To the surprise of everyone watching, and even Varley, Ichigo deactivated his balance breaker, then removed his sacred gear altogether. Crossing his arms over his chest, the spiky-haired Soul Reaper took a breath prior to swnging them out as a veil of black spiritual power obscured him from view again. However, when it cleared up, what they saw was not something that any of them had been expecting. The top of Ichigo's clothing had disappeared, looking as though it had been shredded or burnt away. His full body had turned a pure bone white with red tribal markings, like his mask, and now had much larger muscles along with a spike on each shoulder. Tufts of red fur covered his wrists. His hair had become a lot longer and shaggier, giving it the appearance of a manet. His fingers and toes all ended in claws, and he had a strong-looking tail leading from his lower back. The one detail that dominated their attention, though, was the large hole in the center of his chest. Throwing his head back, Ichigo let out a loud, bestial roar whilst black Getsuga-like energy surged around his new form. He leaped at the off-guard Varley, taking advantage of the latter's distracted state. He dished out a vicious left hook with his free fist, knocking the pseudo-dragon's large head to the side. Parrying the hand that tried to swat him away, Ichigo flash-stepped over to Varley's chest and punched him again, leaving a fist-shaped dent in the armor and toppling his opponent. Varley used Divide on Ichigo again to even things out somewhat, but to his surprise the transformed substitute seemed unaffected, another surge of energy surrounding him and restoring his strength. He saw Ichigo dismiss the ebony Zanpakuto in his grasp and set to assaulting him with a series of powerful punches, sending vibrations throughout his body. After a moment, Varley managed to grab Ichigo and hurled him away. Ichigo righted himself in mid-air and landed on his feet, gouging out two small trails in the ground. He remained cautious as he observed Varley getting back up. "King, follow my lead and trust your instincts," his inner hollow instructed. "We're gonna unload a Sero on this guy." Ichigo stuck his right arm out towards Varley, his index and middle finger pointed in his direction whilst the rest were curled in. Soon after, spiraling lines of crimson energy began to converge at his fingertips, forming a translucent crimson orb that was steadily growing. In response, Varley held out his own arm and began charging up a large magic bullet. A few seconds later, both combatants released their respective attacks. Varley's sphere, however, was overcome by Ichigo's Sero, which was fired as a continuous beam, penetrating through the opposing obstacle and racing on towards the White Dragon Emperor undeterred. There was a large explosion when the Sero collided with a surprised Varley, making everyone tense as they anticipated the outcome. Once the smoke cleared up, they saw that Varley had been thrown back into the barrier, which now sported a rather sizable array of cracks. Ichigo was still standing in the same place, his arm now lowered. Varley gasped loudly as he fell away from the barrier and dropped to his knees. He clutched his head and shouted out defiantly. His draconic armor glowed a bright white, then vanished in a flash of light, leaving the dark silver-haired teen in his normal appearance. He was panting heavily and had multiple new scratches and a few bruises across his skin. Detecting that the fight was now over, Ichigo released his full hollow form as well as his Bankai, turning back to his usual combat visage with his clothing also being properly restored. He felt a sudden wave of fatigue, but didn't let it show and kept his face neutral. "Looks like I've reached my limit," Varley breathed, shakily standing back up. "Even if I wasn't able to fully use Juggernaut Drive as effectively or for as long due to already being injured, that was an impressive display." He gave a non-hostile smirk to Ichigo and Issei. "I never expected to be pushed into a corner like this. You're both powerful opponents, but you better make sure to get stronger, Hyudo. I want our fated battle to be legendary, something to be recorded for ages to come." Just then, a voice was heard from the sky. "Yahoo, sorry I'm late," said a new figure as he dropped down next to Varley. He was wearing Chinese ornamental battle armor and had a staff in his hand. His facial features somewhat resembled a monkey. "Wow, Varley, you look pretty messed up." "I fought some surprisingly strong opponents," Varley simply replied. "We'd better get going, Biko. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're a descendant of the Sun Wukong, aren't you?" Azazel questioned. "Yeah, but I'm not so boring and rigid as the old man," Biko answered. "Which is why I joined Varley here. I'm sure that I'll get my fair share of fun and a good few strong battles." "Sun Wukong? You mean the legendary monkey warrior?" Issei queried, now having recovered enough to stand without leaning into Ria's, something that she seemed a little upset over if the small pout she was wearing was anything to go off. "The very same," Biko confirmed. "Although, the original is still a real monster despite his age." A magic circle materialized beneath the pair. "Don't disappoint me, Issei Hayadu," said Varley. "I'm looking forward to seeing your progress the next time we meet." When they had finally vanished, everyone let out a sigh of relief. "Well, that's finally over," stated Azazel. "I think that this pretty much cements that we need to declare peace." "We have no objections to this," Sirzex agreed. "Let us unite our strength and end all petty squabbles among our ranks. You shall have our full support and cooperation, both in this peace and against this new common enemy," Michael declared. Azazel turned to the other fallen angels present. "I will also join this peace and alliance. If any of you aren't happy with it, then you can go now, but the next time we meet will be as enemies." "We live and die for Azazel-sama," they all announced. "Peace." "Thanks for your loyalty," the head fallen said to them appreciatively. Issei suddenly remembered something and rushed forward to the leaders. Excuse me," he interrupted. "Michael-sama, I was wondering if I could ask you what I wanted to before." "Ah yes, I remember that. What is it that you want?" Michael asked. "Can you please allow Aisha and Zenovia to pray without being hurt?" The blonde angel turned to the two in question, both of whom looked surprised. "Would the two of you still pray despite everything that has happened and what you now know?" "Yes," Aisha told him. "I will pray and offer thanks, because I am truly grateful for my life. I have friends who care about me now, and I've been able to meet you, Michael-sama, someone who I've always admired." "I too will continue to pray," Zenovia said firmly. "And I do not blame you for anything that has happened, Michael-sama." "Thank you for your forgiving hearts," said Michael, a pleased expression adorning his face. "I shall make arrangements in the system to facilitate for you. It shouldn't be any issue if it's only the two of you." Irina approached her former partner and Aisha. "Zenovia, I want to apologize," she said. "I didn't know the truth about why you left, and I was angry at you, but I can't be angry after what I've learned here. Please forgive me, and can we be friends again?" The brunette smiled at her. "Of course, Irina. I never held any grudge against you anyway." Happy, the trio of girls gave a small prayer, only for Aisha and Zenovia to cry out in pain. Michael chuckled. "It won't work straight away, I still need to modify the system." "Well, it looks like things will be picking up around here," Kuro remarked as he walked up to Ichigo, holding Shadow in his arms. "Yeah, things are definitely going to get livelier," Ichigo agreed. "Probably get even crazier too. Then there's the Chaos Brigade to deal with. Still, I think it's nice that the three factions have finally achieved peace," Nina commented as she joined them. "We should enjoy everything while we can." Ichigo gave them a smile, shifting his attire back to his civilian clothing. "Yeah." He called Koneko over from the rest of the peerage. "Let's go home, guys." Next day, ORC clubroom. "And so, as of today, I will be the teacher in charge of overseeing the Occult Research Club, so you can all call me Azazel-sensei from now on," announced Azazel from behind the desk where Ria's usually Saturday. He smirked as he saw the redhead Gremory get ready to protest. "Oh, and Sirzex actually ordered this, so you can't say anything against it." Ria sighed in defeat. "By the way," Issei began. "How did you get your arm back?" "Oh, this is something I've been wanting to try out for a while now," said Azazel happily, rolling up his sleeve. His forearm unexpectedly shot off and began flying around the room. It's a multi-purpose prosthetic arm that I created from my sacred gear research. The arm returned to him and reattached, then the hand began spinning like a drill. You know, I actually think that you deliberately cut your arm off just so you could have an excuse to use that, Ichigo spoke blatantly. Ha ha. You're sharp, kid. Azazel admitted without a hint of shame. Anyway, I'm not just enrolled as a teacher here for show. I'm actually going to be helping you to train your sacred gears among general training and conditioning. Kiba, how long can you maintain your balance breaker for? The blonde prince of Kuo Academy was initially caught off guard by the unexpected question. About an hour, he answered. Not good enough, stated Azazel. You need to be able to use it for much longer, especially for when you're in a long battle. As for you Red Dragon Emperor, while it's impressive that you developed a subspecies instead of ending up with the normal scale male, you need to truly gain your balance breaker. Varley can hold his continuously for a month, and that was the last time I recorded it. He's most likely improved even further by now. A month? DMN, that's a lot to catch up to, Issei muttered in disbelief. I'm just gonna have to do it though, so I can protect everyone. The black-haired man with gold bangs turned to Ichigo. Also, what exactly is that sword of yours? It doesn't match any of the legendary blades, at least not the ones I know of. It's a sacred gear, isn't it? Rias inquired. I highly doubt that, Azazel refuted. I'm not claiming to know every sacred gear there is, but his sword doesn't seem to be one. You're right, it's not, the orange-haired teen revealed, shocking the devils, besides Zenovia. But you told me it was. Ria said crossly, crossing her arms. Actually, no I didn't, countered Ichigo. I simply asked you what you thought, you're the one who assumed that it was a sacred gear. The crimson-haired girl was silent at his words, settling for giving him an annoyed pout and light glare. So, care to shed any light on what it is? Azazel asked. Well, I suppose that you could explain it as some sort of spirit weapon or something I guess, Ichigo responded while scratching the back of his head. I can't really say the specifics because I don't fully understand the process myself, but it was forged from my soul, or at least a part of it. Azazel nodded in understanding, seeming to have accepted his explanation. He then placed both hands on the table and his mouth formed a mischievous smile, giving Ichigo a bad vibe about what was coming next. All right, listen up, the man commanded. By order of your own Mouser's ex Lucifer, all female members of the Occult Research Club are to move in with Issei Hayadu. The reactions to his statement were varied. Rias looked frustrated yet defeated, knowing that there was nothing she could do about it. Issei looked shocked but happy. Akino was giggling while Aisha looked crestfallen and was mumbling sadly. Zenovia looked determined and muttered something about having a greater chance now. Koneko was expressionless as usual, yet there was a glint of irritation in her hazel eyes. Well, I'm not actually a part of this club, so you can forget about me, said Nina firmly. And don't try pulling out some lame excuse or on-the-spot amendment. I refuse to go. Azazel sighed in exasperation. Fine, fine, you win. He looked at them all appraisingly. He then quietly said to himself, you kids are an interesting generation. I'm sure that you'll manage to achieve great things. It's not going to be boring watching you, that's for sure. Omake, Ophis Big Brother, Part 3. Ichigo, the Fragments, Issei and the rest of the Gremory peerage and their other allies were in the middle of fighting against the hostile magicians from the Chaos Brigade. Issei and Rias had just returned from saving Gasper and Koneko. Azazel was up in the air battling Kateria Leviathan. Suddenly, serpentine energy chains manifested around all the Chaos Brigade members and promptly bound them tightly, restricting their movement and preventing them from launching any kind of attack. Kateria fell down from the sky with a loud scream. A magic! Circle appeared next to Ichigo, followed soon after by the appearance of a young-looking girl with dark hair and eyes, dressed in a gothic Lolita fashion. Ophis? What is the meaning of this? Kateria demanded, angry that she was unable to kill the faction leaders, completely forgetting that Ophis was head of the Chaos Brigade as well as vastly more powerful than her. Her shout caused all of those present, besides Ichigo, to look at the new arrival in alarm. The chains around Cat area constricted, making her cry out in pain. All of the invading terrorists began to feel very afraid. "Why are you all attacking Big Brother and causing him trouble?" the dragon guised as a girl asked with an undertone of anger in her normally empty voice. "Why your big brother?" one of the nearby magicians fearfully inquired. Ophis grabbed Ichigo's free hand. "He's my big brother. Why were you all causing him trouble?" Nobody answered her, all of the Chaos Brigade members now too afraid to say anything, especially that they were trying to kill the teenage substitute and his friends. "I'll deal with you all later," Ophis decided, instantly transporting them all away, leaving only the 3 faction leaders and their allies present. Needless to say, they had all watched the spectacle in stunned silence, and were now staring at Ichigo and Ophis in the same manner. Releasing a tired sigh, Ichigo dismissed his Zanpakuto. "Hey Ophis, how are you?" "I'm alright big brother," Ophis replied. "Dummy Red is still too noisy though. I want him gone." "We've already had this conversation before young lady," Ichigo told her sternly. "Sorry," she apologized. She then gained an expectant glint in her eyes. "Can you please pat my head?" Just as Ichigo was about to raise his hand and oblige to Ophis' request, Koneko unexpectedly dashed forward with speed that rivaled Kiba's and seized Ichigo's free arm, hugging it tightly. The others looked on in disbelief, most of them starting to become seriously concerned for Koneko's safety. "Ichigo Nii-san is my big brother," the petite rook stated adamantly, glaring at the Infinity Dragon. "He was my big brother first, stop trying to take my place." Ophis gave her a blank stare before also hugging Ichigo's arm. "My big brother," she said stubbornly. "Let go, I want to be petted." If one looked strong enough, they could see sparks flying between her and Koneko's eyes. Koneko grit her teeth and began hissing in a way that reminded Ichigo of a cat. "You know, it is perfectly normal for a guy to have 2 younger sisters," Ichigo cut in. Koneko looked at him with a troubled face. "I don't want to share Nii-san." Ophis also looked at him, having a small yet cute pout. "Dragons don't like to share." The spiky-haired protector's face morphed into a light frown. He pulled his arms free from both girls. "Now you two listen to me," he said, going into full big brother mode. "I don't want to hear nonsense like you don't want to share again, am I clear? Ophis, I've already told you that you can't just have whatever you want. Koneko, you should know better than to act like this, you're normally always composed. I see both of you as my little sisters, so that means you're sisters to each other too, all right? Be nice to each other." Both Ophis and Koneko bowed their heads sadly. "Sorry," they spoke at once. His features softening into a small smile, Ichigo began ruffling their hair affectionately. "Hey, enough with the long faces already," he told them gently. "I'm not mad at you two, okay? Just treat each other nicely." The duo looked up at him with happy smiles and gave nods in understanding, enjoying the attention he was giving them. Ophis hummed contentedly whilst Koneko lightly purred. Meanwhile, everyone else couldn't believe what they were witnessing. "Holy CRP," Azazel spoke out loud. "I can't believe it. This kid's actually tamed Ophis. We are witnessing a miracle." "Ichigo Kurosaki is powerful indeed," Michael concurred. The others just gave dumbfounded nods in agreement.